Hello. I'm gonna start in a sec. I'm about to get a burger. It's a burger kind of stream. Like, start the stream, get a burger kind of stream. Kind of burger? It's a secret. I don't know if I can tell you. I don't know if you have clearance for that. Trying to take my burger? What happens? You like my burger and you come get my burger? Hold on. BRB. Borger is arriving. Borger acquired. All right. While I eat, I'm just gonna start a presentation or find something. I saw that Mathel did like a playthrough of Act whatever they gave them, but I couldn't find his in the VOD. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's on a different channel or something. It seemed like all they had was all this. Bunch of talks. I don't know who that is playing. I don't know who you are. I don't know what they're talking about. I think it was after the skill animations. I think I'm just gonna watch from there, wherever that started, because I had it a second ago. And then I clicked around like a dum-dum. Character skills, coming up, character skills. No gameplay, no buy? I agree.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our talk today on character skills. I'm Rory Rackham. I'm lead game designer working on...
It's a cowboy burger. Barbecue sauce, onions, pretzel bun, sweet potato fries.
And Jonathan, the game director.
Let me know if the volume's weird. It sounds fine to me, though.
So, today we're going to talk about all the huge improvements we've got to player skills in Path of Exile 2. We're going to talk about how combat flow is massively improved by animations and motion. And we're also going to talk about how we've got a new depth of skill variety, doing things we've never done before with skills, and thanks to our revamped skill and support system, as well as all sorts of fancy new features. We will start looking at...
And pepper jack cheese.
So, Path of Exile 1 had a few issues with character animation, mostly stemming from the fact that our rigs were prehistoric.
They say had like it's already gone, and this isn't coming out in a year. Fuck you!
Limited what we could do with animations, and limited how well our animators could stretch their animation muscles. Would that be accurate, Ed?
Yeah, no, they were borderline unusable. Some of them, quite a few of them actually, we were animating straight onto the joints of the character, which is a very painful process. Some of them had strange little quirks, like Ranger, for instance, her spine would just disappear randomly, and you'd have to go looking for that. And also they were all unique and uniquely named, so there was no ability to share anything between them. So everything we had to do from scratch, and it was, yeah, it wasn't very good.
It meant that whenever I said, oh, can we get a new spellcast animation? It's like, well, it's a horrible, painful process for 7 characters, and then every combination of weapons that the spell could be used with, which was all of them. So...
There was a lot of disagreement when a new skill was being made.
The slow, dreadful walk towards the animation area when I'm like, I've got some bad news, everyone. In addition, all these animation improvements, well, the lack of animation improvements meant that we were stuck using the same animations for many skills, and that meant almost no motion to them. Your character was standing very still until, from the start of the animation until the end of the animation, and any time that meant we had any decent length attack time or cast time on a skill, you would just be sitting there and waiting for the skill to finish. There is no real input from the player from the moment they push the button until the moment they've been stunned out of it by a monster hitting them because they couldn't move. So we needed a new form of mobility. And we had also just relied on increasing the speed of skills significantly over time just to get rid of this feeling. Every skill had to be fast because it just didn't feel great without it. Even from very low levels, the player is moving very quickly in a way that's unrealistic for an untrained person washing up on a beach to swing a sword. Here is a close look at one of our fancy new animations. This is the Whirling Assault skill. It shows some mobility. The player can control their motion as they use the skill, and the animations look gorgeous. Right, Ed? Yeah. He knows it. So now they have flow, they have natural motion, and they have just control that the player's never been able to have before. Do you want to tell us a bit about how we started off?
Yeah, so I've wanted to work on the character animations for a long time. I've been at this company about 8 years, and to me the old character animations always felt a bit clunky, a bit spongy, particularly in early game. They just didn't really feel satisfying to kill things with, and killing should be fun. So
in game.
In game, yeah. Of course. And so I have a bit of a background with Shaolin martial arts, and I also just have a very
He's lying.
strong opinion of what I think looks good. And so with that, I started to work on the just basic attacks of the character, just making sure that even swinging a sword with no audio, no special effects, felt impactful. And yeah, with the new rigging, this meant that I didn't have to worry about doing this for each individual character. I could just focus on each individual weapon and make them feel unique and individual. Yeah.
Yeah, even outside the animations, it was also a big focus. Even the basic attack should feel punchy. We've got hit effects, assuming you're doing enough damage to the target, you'll get some punchy hit effects. You've got some cool blood going on that's reacting to the angle and direction of the swing, and now the color of the blood of the monster, which is something we didn't have before when every stone golem was filled with jam. So that, even just starting at the most basic level, right, the very first time you swing the weapon at a monster on the beach should feel like a whole other game, really. Looking at the momentum in the actions, this is where there's been a huge amount of iteration, all sorts of cool tech that we've got to make the character feel mobile, make the character feel like they've got control, and that everything has a physical presence to it. So the basic melee attacks all have a step attack built into them. So if you're up close, you'll just perform the attack normally. But if you're at a distance while running,
Like Wolson did.
while continuing on at your movement speed, and then by the time you reach them, that's when your weapon will strike them. So it has a really strong flow of the motion of your movement leads directly into the attack, which also gives melee characters a huge combat advantage, because the monster is maybe realizing you're in their face and is about to start the swing when you've already got your weapon most of the way towards their face. This has just resulted in much smoother melee combat. And for the non-basic melee attacks, we want to also bring in that kind of smooth motion to it. So, do you want to tell us about the step attacks, on how we did that for the regular melee attacks first?
Yeah, so for every standard stationary melee attack, they've all got an additive animation, usually from the waist down, which just adds a little step, depending on how much anticipation the attack has before the contact. Sometimes that's very small, sometimes that can be somewhere around a second. And that's usually custom done to the attack, so it shouldn't be some weird, janky, foot slidey mess.
I bring it up because people consider Wolson to be one of the worst action RPGs to ever come out ever. But even Diablo 4 took a significant amount of ideas from it. Shortly after the D4 beta, I played through Wolson again. I liked it a lot more. It was really good. But it is janky, and it does have its issues. So the focus on Wolson was always how bad it was, and not how much stuff they actually did super correctly that nobody else had done at that point.
Into the swing, when you're doing a proper melee swing, you can't just lock off the hips and just be moving your upper body to do the swinging. So it all flows so much more efficiently. Yeah.
Any idea, Ed, how many animations it requires to just do a single simple attack? How many different animations and variants there are?
Well, there's a little bit coming up with how many animations there are, but
they're still working on that game for some reason. I think a new studio bought it and they started taking over development, and they had a pretty big patch very recently for Wolson.
So with some of the shorter ranged anticipations, we were getting some foot flicker when you were coming out of a run. So we had to do steps that started with the left foot forward and steps that started with the right foot forward. And then we also have different animations, of course, if you're holding a sword and a shield, or a sword and a sword, or a sword and a scepter. And so, yeah.
It explodes.
It explodes.
Yeah,
There's a lot
of animations.
I've been busy.
Another thing that we've done for attacks is that we have a system that we've internally called pushy mode, very catchy name, where objects that have size, usually you can walk up to them and you and the zombie just can't move past each other. But now if you're bigger than the zombie's bigger than you, or you're doing an attack that has some motion to it, you'll have bonus pushiness, and you can move that monster with you with the attack or slide them to the side, depending on the skill. And very large monsters can just push straight through swarms of enemies to reach you. And conversely, when you, say, turn into a giant bear, you can now just wander through monsters as they're pushed to the side. And they don't really... Being a bear does have an advantage of size in more ways than one. And that also just makes combat feel
Can you
like
fuck
you can
the
block
bear?
the player off, because now they have options to push through if they haven't got too surrounded or they aren't fighting anything too large. We also have much more control during the actions. There's a window the start of every attack, and sometimes throughout an entire attack, where you can just shift your direction, meaning if you start a very long attack, you can realize you've made a huge tactical blunder and switch to which direction you're attacking entirely. The longer the attack,
Oh my
the
goodness,
more you
that
can
is
turn
so
around
slow.
during it.
Oh my
It's great for
goodness.
following a target as well. Previously, if you start an attack and the monster just stepped slightly to the side, then you're just watching as you perform a big swing at nothing. Now you have full control of it. And we've also changed the area where you can cancel on attacks. So you can break out early or you can break out afterwards just by walking or performing another skill that could interrupt it. And that just lets
I
us
love big
increase
slow
the attack
windups,
time
but
on
PoE's
those
had a huge
subskills.
problem of nerfing all the big slow windups to be way worse than
Skills
attacking
that
10 million
the
times per second.
idea is that you've got an option
It,
now,
it has been a
but it's
long
much more
time, like 2,
advantageous,
maybe
less
3
of
years
a
since it has been viable to
mistake
do
press a
something like
long
that.
attack time button if you've timed it wrong. You can always change your mind at the last minute. That also leads into our dodge roll. Dodge roll can cancel out of any action, making it great for a slow attacker where no matter how big an attack you've got going on, if you realize the monster is a boss or a monster is about to squish you, you can just roll out of there. As Jonathan mentioned during the keynote, you can have immunity to attacks and many projectiles right at the start of the dodge roll. So as you can see in this example here, the player is just perfectly timing their dodges so that they're missing every single attack from the enemy. You can't cancel the dodge roll itself, so the biggest disadvantage of it is that once you've started it, you can't be attacking until you've finished the roll. It's really the one downside of it, because the dodge roll also has massive mobility. You can switch your direction mid-dodge roll. Doesn't matter which way you're facing when you press the button, because you can just switch and change your mind if you realize, maybe I want to go in an opposite direction. And it is not faster than running. It might look faster than running. It is more stylish than running. And it is hard sometimes to stop yourself just rolling everywhere. It's technically a defensive advantage, just in case there was some monster that you hadn't seen coming at you.
You never know.
You never know. My advice is roll everywhere all the time.
Right. Just to clarify that, it isn't that it's not faster at some points in the animation, it's faster at the start and then slower at the end.
Yes, yes.
So that means that the overall average speed is the same as your run, but you get faster and then slower.
And it does scale with your move speed as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So the faster your character's move speed, the slightly shorter the dodge and slightly further it will take you. So it evens out, and it makes the animation still feel natural. It doesn't get crazy fast until your character gets ridiculously fast.
I am not eating a burger anymore. Dun dun dun! I'm gonna do a quick explanation of what I'm working on, because for a while it's gonna be setting up. I don't want to show that. Wait, wait a second. Hold on, there's some secrets in here. I'm gonna explain what I'm working on before I turn the VODs back on and kind of go into worko mode. Boop. So recently I had a big rework in Myriad of how armor is generated. I think on this Liana 2 has been my test token for making things. You can't really see her equipment. It shouldn't matter, because it's all going to show up in the chat, which you can see. I generate I think I have to do it a janky way. It's all kind of like not fully connected yet. Man, I don't I'm gonna have like 30 code windows open and I can't put it over the live stream. Okay, so Liana, generate an armor. That is not how I do it. Hold on. Ludatire 2, because I replaced it. Last questions in 5 minutes. Well, this is Ster 2 Ster. Ster leaves chat. Ster 2 Ster leaves chatters behind. This is all you get. So here's an armor that I just generated. You can see the whole thing in chat. This is kind of a dev mode debug. The nimble half-plate generation, it sets a weight goal of what it wants the weight to be for an armor. The weight goal was 9, but it reached 8 because it doesn't always explicitly get to the weight that it wanted to. It added modifiers 5 times to get to this weight. Rolled 5 positive modifiers. Negative rolls usually reduce the rate, so it'll increase the amount of rolls it needs to do to get to that weight. And here's just letting me know what mod IDs it rolled. So you could have mod rolls of like minus to armor, and that would technically lower the weight so it could have more shit on it, so it auto accounts for downsides on it. And then this one is I'd have to look at the mod IDs because it did something special here, because this whole counter range is 1 modifier, and then that's one, so only 3 things actually got on it. But then there's other stuff, like there is one that could have lowered the weight and then ended it. All chatters left behind. So I want to get one with a negative roll example, which are less common at the moment. For every modifier, like the evasion one, there would be a 1 in 5 chance that it's negative. This one also hit negative move. So this one gets a big armor. 10 armor is pretty big. Normally a 10 armor would be like 9 weight. This armor's kind of shit, not gonna lie, but you know, it can exist. What is Myriad? That's a great question. You're getting left behind. So what we're going to do today is kind of set up a very similar system for weapons, so that when I roll a weapon, it's not going to fill up the weight with a whole bunch of modifiers. What it's going to do is I really just want to make one modifier have a chance to appear on a weapon, and it may add weight, it may reduce the damage and instead give it range. It'll just be like one thing that doesn't explicitly make a weapon better, but can universally be applied to weapons that make it a little bit different. And I also want to have a separate output where weapons currently... Let's generate a sword. That one didn't... Let's generate... Here we go. These little circles under the name are so that players can add crafting to a weapon. If they're like, oh, I want to modify the weapon. That little circle is you can do it one time. Some items have... you know, multiple crafting slots. So I also want the mods that I'm making right now for weapons to have an output that is technically transformed into an item that could modify a weapon rather than applying to an item on its direct generation. So it's like a twofold. I want item generation to have the potential to have one modifier, but I also want to cut that in half and also output if it were an item. And I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do that. But I'm going to be setting up some, like, I'm going to be duplicating the way Armor's doing it at the moment. And just setting up a lot of framework and stuff like that. And I'm going to watch this.
Right. I'd just like to draw attention on that last slide, by the way, to the fact the character was rolling between the monster's legs.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't work with slams, as you can see from this poor dead character here.
I can't see. Now I can't see. Wait, now I can't see.
Do you want to tell us about some of the blending between the animations that we have?
Yeah, so I took a different approach to a lot of the attacks and how they were animated. In the past, we had the character's idle, and every attack would start and finish in that same idle. To try and get the combat to keep moving, I just kind of did away with that. And if you saw with the basic attack before, it was more of a left-right continuous motion with it. And as you can see here, this guy just keeps rolling with the slams. What I found while I was doing that was a lot of attacks had common points that they would move through. And those kind of came, I guess you could call them like sub-idles. In which to start and end attacks in, and totally intentionally, it flowed together very nicely. Wasn't a surprise at all. But Yeah, I don't know. We've also got blending for when attacks don't have those similar starting and end points. So if you do have an attack that finishes over here and the next one starts down here, there'll be a slight blend to try and smooth that transition. And yeah, it just helps keep the character feeling alive, energetic. We've been really trying to get rid of like awkward stops in combat. Like combat, you don't really tend to stop and change what you're doing. It's
Heist story tie-ins?
flowing.
I really haven't thought much about the story.
Nice.
I think there's a whole other talk on their narrative,
Some more
but
improvements we got. Oh yeah, speed variation. on
I'll
animations.
experience it when I experience it, kind of thing for me.
So in order to keep things pretty, with the longer animations that we have, when you start to speed them up to ridiculous speeds, as happens in this game, if you've got a lot of detail in an action, that detail starts to get really messy. And so a way to combat that was we came up with speed variations. So at certain speed brackets, the animation of the attack will change to a slightly shorter version, which better suits that speed. And every attack has around 4. Some of them more or less, depending on how speed affects them.
Which, when
Yeah,
Jonathan
and
was
that-
asking about the number of animations, just
Yes.
all that previous number, just multiply it by 4.
Yeah, that adds to the number of steps and variations.
Gold being in PoE? I don't really know what it's used for yet.
It basically means it's very hard for your character to feel like it being played in fast forward. It'll feel
I would love to hear their
combat.
explanation of why they added it
But
before I
it's
have a
also
judgment on it. I feel like the game doesn't need it, but it might be easier for people to understand.
A human blender again.
Yeah, when I say. Can you make it look good when I'm attacking 15 times a second, please?
Because again, explaining currency to Germa was not an easy task. And Germa, I don't want to say, oh, Germa. He's like my benchmark for a person who hasn't seen anything in this game before, and this is their first impression, and like how long it takes for them to understand a mechanic, and that's really important in game design.
Animation itself. So we have these beautiful animations, and the effects are tied into them directly. Our effects artists have made some amazing.
I think the game would benefit a lot from removing vendor recipes and its over-reliance on currency, so gold could be a good thing for sure. I would love to, if now that PoE 2 is separate, there is a lot of bloat in currency items that need to just get thrown out and redesigned. And if they're willing to add gold, that's a great point to just be like, nah, all this shit's gone. This is too much. There's way too much.
And that's when you know it's working correctly.
If they have a talk on like their intentions for future crafting, that's probably what I'd be most interested in, but I don't think that they do.
So much variety on the spellcasting, and that's
So I don't really know what there is, I guess. And I know they're doing more talks today, like the live stream is live right now with new stuff.
feels really cool as well. You'll notice
All
that
current,
a lot of
not all
animations
currency,
we
but
have
there's definitely
are
like,
very bespoke, very unique
there's a lot of
to
things that do the same things as other things, or do really niche things that no one even uses anymore, that have been outdated, that still exist and still drop, and
feel right with a spear.
then have a million vendor recipes associated with them. That, like, as a new player, there is nothing to teach you a vendor recipe.
We have decided that every
That it would be
weapon
better if you
type-
just like traded gold
every skill given
for
weapon type is restricted
vendor
to that
recipes.
specific weapon, and this gives every weapon a really strong identity. You feel like a monk when you're using a quarterstaff.
Which they've been going that way for a long time to remove vendor stuff, because like even Navali was a big component of.
intelligence.
Yeah, you can dance.
It's not the same, but it kind of ends up being the same.
It's spectacular.
The frick am I doing here with this?
And this also just lets us have mechanics that are specific to each weapon types. Like, for example, maces are amazing at breaking armor. And then when you want to mix and match those mechanics, it works really well, because you have these sort of unique mechanics that come from the skills. You have these unique forms of movement, where every weapon moves differently, and it just results in it playing differently. It feels like a different weapon type can feel like a completely different class, which is especially cool when you can combine them together. So let's jump off from there and talk about skill variety. So Path of Exile 1 had a few issues that we wanted to focus on changing up for Path of Exile 2. The main one comes from the fact that you feel that
Is that big enough for you guys to read, by the way?
you can only really have one truly powerful skill that your character is invested
If you
in,
actually are.
and everything else is supplementary. It's very hard to have two skills that work together because of the nature of various systems, which we'll get into a second. This means that every skill needs to be pretty good at doing just about everything. You can't have something with a single job. And it means that situational skills, like for example, a skill that has a very long attack time, they have very little place in the game. This is caused mostly by the socket system, where you will usually only have one fully supported skill, and a fully supported skill is so much more powerful than one that isn't supported. And you might have two if you're lucky, but even then, if you did have extra sockets, you're usually better off putting those sockets to use on buffs or permanent effects or some skill that doesn't need to do damage and then can be applying other utility effects at the same time. The specialization options the character has through gear and passives also just lean further into this, where you are better off putting all of your power into the specific combination of mechanics that one of your primary skills uses than it is to spread it over a few skills to give you more options in combat. Because, as we already mentioned, it was already needing to be built. The skill needs to be built so it can do just about everything, so you don't really have any situational skills in the first place. This really hampered skill design because we can't have any particularly slow skills. We can't have a skill that is only useful for damaging a large number of monsters and has very little use if there's a single enemy. And we end up balancing the skills around the support gems and assuming that you've got a bunch of powerful damaging supports. We ended up having supports mostly exist as a way to boost your damage directly, which is cool, but there are plenty of other mechanics in the game that also boost your damage, so we don't need to use the support gem system for that.
It's funny that for each of these bullet points, there was an expansion where they fucking tried one of them and it didn't do anything. So it's like they still tried all this anyway.
Because of its mana cost, because it's going to be your damaging skill. And you're probably used to using all of your available mana, all of your available sockets, all of that on buffs that will just permanently affect your character, and once you turn them on, you won't think about them again until you die and revive and realize you haven't turned them on, this respawn. We thought about ways we could approach forcing the player to use a variety of skills and decided that we completely wanted to avoid cooldowns being the way that we force you to rotate through skills. We don't want to have skills with a long cooldown without a reason that feels very appropriate for the skill. And we also didn't want to add skills that would generate mana or generate a resource for you as their primary purpose, just so you can use other skills that you otherwise couldn't spend. That would be able to force you into using a combination of skills, but you would spend half your time doing almost no damage, and then all of your rest of your time doing a huge amount of damage, and you'll feel bad when you finally have to go back to your little bit of damage skill again, just so you can get some more mana to keep having fun. We also really wanted to avoid putting the character in a rotation. We don't want it ever be the case where you're like, okay, it's a boss, I'll just go 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and repeat until the boss is dead. So the focus is on every skill being situational or setting up a situation in a not entirely reliable way.
I think I'm glad about all that, and the best example existing of that, I think, is the Doom games, the new ones, Doom Eternal, where it's like you have like 30 options, but you really only need to use them when they become relevant. But I don't know how they haven't actually, they say that solution, but they haven't demonstrated that necessity for the solution. Because there's really, again, they've only shown killing a group of enemies, killing a boss are the two situations. They've mentioned some stuff about maybe like armor being different now, and like you need to use certain skills on armored enemies, but like that, they haven't really, there's just two situations
that help us achieve these goals. The new skill system, the support changes, the dual specialization, spirit system, and more. First, let's talk about the new skill system, which was announced at the first exilecon, but we've kind of perfected it over the past few years. The character now starts with 9 sockets, so right from level 1, if you happen to carry over a bunch of gems or get really lucky and finding some uncut gems, you can fill your character with skills and be doing all sorts of things. They have their own sockets, and what this means is you start with 2 support sockets, so if you happen to find a support gem early on, you can just put it in and start using it right away. But as you progress, you will find currency that will... First, you'll find common currency that will upgrade it from 2 to 3.
I'm surprised they're still doing gems. Random aside. that it was a plot point in the first game that I thought they were going to do something different with it, because the areas that you travel to do not believe that gems give people any power, and they're kind of confused by the fact that you get power from gems because it doesn't work for them. So they propose that it's like a whole belief system that you think gems are strong and they make you strong. So like all of PoE 2, apparently, the first act at least is true that you are in that area where they do not use gems. So I guess that's why they have uncut gems that you have to make yourself. But I thought they would have like switched to runes or something. But I guess at the point that you turn them into runes to match the theming of those characters, people would think that they were D2 rune words and get confused really easily. I don't know. I was expecting some weird transition, and especially with the games being separated, it seems like it would be easier to do that now.
Sockets, and you'll probably find a few of those before you find the currency that will upgrade a skill gem from 3 to 4 sockets. This means that your skills, large numbers of your skills will grow as you progress, rather than just you focus all of your currency and all of your investment on maximizing a single skill. It is naturally your character, as your character plays, you'll get more options for all of your skills. And this usually means that we have, well, this also meant that we had to change how we think about socket colors as well. We really wanted you to stick with your skill gem. Once you find the gem that you want to keep using, you're not replacing that with another version that you find with more sockets, as the currency is going to be the thing letting you upgrade that. And so we did a similar thing with changing socket colors. If you find a blue support gem that you want to use, and you want to make the socket blue, it is a deterministic use of a chromatic orb to change one of your sockets
I hope,
to that
does
color.
the crowd cheer?
So you know
for the simple thing
to roll the dice with your one remaining chromatic orb to try and get a socket color that you don't have, and just find that you can't use any of the support gems you were using before, as well as the new one.
There's actually, just to extend on that thought, like there's a lot of situations in PoE 1 where you just kind of like, you can
also made that
you
one
can break
lady
your
immortal
character by just like making the bad choice.
I'd have to look at the dialogue again, Tail, but I think it has a lot to do with the gems coming from the beast that existed on Rayclast, and the beast itself not being on the other continent where the people are confused by the gems. But I don't know.
To re-rolling, so you effectively don't want to use the re-rolling stuff on your items that are important, otherwise you might screw yourself up. And we wanted to avoid all that to make sure that, like, yeah, if you want to just change a single, like now chromatic is just, yeah, use it on the socket you want, pick the color you want it to be. So it makes it so you don't have those kinds of problems.
You actually can blame the beast. This isn't Guilty Gear. You can blame the beast for most stuff in PoE. It's true.
Problems anymore, it just sort of allows it to allow you to do that sort of customization without that issue.
Yeah. It will probably be some late game mechanics where you can roll the dice and risk everything.
There are some late game things that you can, if you want to brick your items, we still have Val orbs and things.
But during the campaign, you don't need to worry about your skill gems. Right. They're safe, and you can feel invested in them.
Right.
Support gems, we've really focused on taking them away from being damage boosts and put them more about customizing the skill. There's a lot of opportunity for you to just choose how you're going to use the skill. And a very important design principle for this was saying that you should not want to use the same support on every one of your skills. Even if you're using all slams, there shouldn't be a support that's like, well, this is a must-have for every slam skill. It should be that you're thinking about, well, this skill I'm going to use in the thick of combat, so I'm going to put the unbreakable support on it, so I'm much harder to stun out of while I'm doing the skill.
No one's going to use that.
This skill here,
I'm sorry to break it to you, dude.
I'm going to use it from a distance. I'm going to snipe monsters with my Sunder, so I'm going to just focus on something that will give me a damage boost very occasionally. We have plenty of old favorites coming back.
I hope they get to the point where they're doing exilecon again, and they're like, yeah, so we realized that stun threshold is a totally pointless, stupid thing that we never should have added in the first place, and we only did it because Diablo 2 did it, and we've been doing it for 15 years.
Fork support that you can see, but they come at a cost that means that they're unlikely to be considered an absolute necessity for the skill to be as useful as we want it to be at the mid and early parts of the game. Things like Fist of War return, so every now and then you get a big damage boost to your skill, but it is also, the cooldown is shared between your other skills.
Wait, go back to that slide.
You want to pick carefully which skill you're going to put Fist of War on. And we also have a number of mechanics, like for example the armor break mechanic that maces specialize in. There are support gems to let you put that on other skills, nowhere near as efficiently as the skills that focus entirely on applying armor break, but there's a way to build the combination of skills you want to use together if the skills that inherently come with those mechanics aren't the ones that you want to be using then and there. There's also the dual specialization system, which was shown off during...
Yeah! Oh no! I clicked all the way! No! No. You fool. Where the fuck was it? I just wanted to read that slide again. Blah, blah, blah. I guess they're that's what they're saying, is they're trying to create different situations because supports are different. Not that they're actually making the situations different, where it is like you're saying, you either fight a big group of enemies or you fight a big boss. So they're making... I think they're also trying to put support gems to add like mobility to skills. I don't know, man. I don't know, dude. So if you want like a mobility skill, then you need to support it with like jump back. They haven't shown that either. It just seemed like their comet ability always did it. I don't know.
Your second specialization on the area of effect so that you can do something different with your main specialization. And it does have the cost of needing to find 2 great weapons to take full advantage of it. But when you do get the 2 weapons that work well together, it can provide a huge amount of customization to your character. This also enhances...
Hold on. Warframe had the exact same problem, where you basically have a gem socket system, but it's the cards. And they had the exact same problem, where it's like, if you're using an assault rifle, every single assault rifle build needs... What is it, like... Serration was just like plus 200% assault rifle damage. And it almost sounds like they're doing that, where they don't want to make a bunch of damage supports, but you're still always going to need the damage support. Which Warframe has taught me, you're going to make a different mistake now.
This also connects to reservation effects, where you can have a reservation effect enabled in one set and a different one in a second. So for example, I could
Like if you want specialization, you can't like there's no reason to have damage supports at all.
And just do spark to clear enemies, and then switch to my second set, and I could be having cast on crit there, and having a high crit spell that is then proccing my single target focused arc skill, and so I can be swapping back and forth based on the situation, or I can bind one of those skills to a specific situation so it automatically swaps back and forth. There is a small time taken to switch. There's a nice little animation if you're just grabbing the weapon off your back. So you have to be tactical about how you use it, but it's small enough that in the thick of combat it's absolutely still very useful to just switch out just based on the situation that you're in that very moment.
I think the reservation thing you were saying before is really worth emphasizing. Is like the whole, having the ability, for example, to have Arctic armor on one versus the other. Like you'll just switch and instantly that will be on. Like there's no like having to worry about it or having to recast it or anything like that. Like you can just switch effectively all the reservation skills from one set to the other just as you weapon swap automatically based on what skills you're using. So it is pretty powerful.
And the reservation will remain on when you die as well. You
right,
need to remember to turn them back on
useful
again.
Bonus.
Especially when you have to, so you can there's a little menu where you can select which weapon set you want them to be in, including shapeshifting. Shapeshifting is its own set in that, so you can say, when I'm a bear, I want Arctic armor to be even tankier. Leading into that, Spirit. So Spirit is a new resource which is used for every permanent effect that you're just going to leave on your character the whole time. You no longer reserve your mana outside of probably some specialized mechanics or keystones or supports, and instead you're focusing on gaining as much spirit as you can if you are wanting to stack permanent effects. So minion characters really care about spirit because their permanent minions are paid with spirit, while their temporary minions are still paid with mana and need to be resummoned. This means as a minion character, you want to get as much spirit as you can to have as large an army, but maybe use some of that spirit for an aura as well. It's a sort of a balancing act in finding the combinations of minions you want, which might mean switching out which minions you have or how many minions you have of each. We've added the ability to just manually unsummon your minions if you want to bring some others in, just to make everything a bit more convenient. And yeah, the fact that they can be set per set doesn't apply to minions, so your minions will just remain active the whole time, but you could switch out which aura is applying to them, or switch to a set that has more spirit, thanks to carrying a scepter, and then has an extra aura active only in that set. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you use your permanent buffs, and in addition, we've tried to make the permanent buffs much more interesting, rather than just flat stat bonuses as well. We also have
That's a big boy.
far more complex crowd control system where there are light stuns, as you can see that little flinch, and there are also heavy stuns if you do a large amount of damage, especially with melee weapons and especially with physical damage. You'll be able to knock a monster into a state where they won't be able to react to you for sometimes a very long time, giving you a huge opening, especially for melee characters, to just deal all the damage while the boss is just recovering. And this system is a system that is connected to freeze. It's connected to a new immobilization effect, which is something that spears specialize in applying at the moment. And the more you apply these, the harder it is to apply more of them to a boss, which does mean that in a team, you're both able to specialize in different mechanics, and you will both build up your effects on the boss, but the boss won't be locked out permanently from having a party of 6 people all applying crazy amounts of crowd control effects. It still gives you a huge tactical advantage, and many weapon types and spell types also take advantage of those mechanics. You can now rely on the fact that at some point during the boss fight, you'll be able to freeze them, and so you can follow through, and the same for applying a heavy stun. Most monsters have their own heavy stun animation where they get knocked down in a
the bosses anyway.
for the moment. The bosses definitely do.
Yeah. Some monsters as well, but the bosses are the main ones.
And this just makes playing a hard-hitting warrior character just feel really punchy as you're just taking the enemy out of combat for a time to just finish them off. The player also has to deal with this system in a mostly positive way, where if you are stunned, then your threshold will build up for the next stun, and that will repeat. So it's very hard to be freeze-locked or stun-locked, and it carries over between the crowd control effects as well. So being frozen means you're very unlikely to be stunned afterwards, making it safer for the player to recover from freeze quickly, and if they can react in time. And this does mean that monsters, that when you're beaten up by a lot of monsters at once, they will keep stacking up stun on you, but the player recovers from stun much, much faster than bosses do, so you don't need to worry about waiting outside of combat for the stun to fall off you. Within a few seconds, you're back into fighting shape again. It means that swarms of monsters can be a threat if you just let yourself be attacked by them, but in general, it's in the player's favor. The player cannot be heavy stunned, I should note. You're not going to be knocked on the ground for 8 seconds. It's just not a thing that you need to worry about, thankfully. Freeze is a little bit longer now, so you need to be a bit careful about freeze, but we've got flasks for that. Now let's take a look at some of the skills. This is a close look at Falling Thunder. Do you want to tell us a bit about the animations on this one, Ed?
Yeah, so this one, I really just wanted that slap in the ground pose. I don't know, I've done a little bit of stuff, training back in the day, and that was just one that felt real good, and I wanted it in the game. It also gives this nice up in the air, like lightning strikey pose, kind of like Thor. And it just flows together really nicely. Like you can spam it, you can use it once, and it works on both occasions.
It was designed as a finisher, as it will spend power charges if you have them, but it's also just a fun to use area skill with some nice mobility to it.
Yeah.
This one you'll recognize as Killing Palm from the keynote. Power charge generator. This was one of the few.
They keep saying that every animation can be used on every character, and I don't know why they're not showing that. They've never shown like a skill
They are giving
being used, like, oh, here's the monk skill, but the sorcerer is using it, you know?
that Falling Thunder skill. So
They always show like, oh, here's a monk skill, here's the monk using it.
they really reward you putting in the effort favorite to finish off monsters with Killing Palm, as well as other power charge generating skills that have other similar
They forgore?
non-reliable,
No!
more skillful conditions for generating the charges. You want to tell us how you created this totally realistic and normal martial arts move?
Yep. So a big challenge for this was doing. I was told it had to be unarmed damage. So he had to hit them with his hand while holding a big stick, which is a little awkward. So the biggest challenge of this was just getting that stick out of the way and making it not the main spectacle, making the palm the main thing you're looking at.
Yeah, the unarmed attacks are a special skill there. An unarmed attack, but they can be used while you're holding a quarterstaff. They use your unarmed damage while your weapon's still in your hand. It's magic.
But you can also use them when you don't have a quarterstaff, right?
Yes.
And is there anything about one hand empty, like what about if you were holding like a mace?
You need both hands to be empty.
Both hands, okay, understood.
Yeah. This is a close look at the Wave of Frost skill. It's just a sick backflip, you know?
Yeah.
This is one of the things that led us into an early sort of, let's make something, what can you do with a staff? What's a cool monk ability? Let's get some Last Airbender stuff going on. And this led us into realizing how fun the mobility of the monk could be. This is the one that really started feeling like, oh, you're a monk, you do this, you then whirling assault through the enemies, and it's just got this awesome mobile feel.
Yeah, this was playing around with evasive maneuvers, and I didn't really plan it, but if you use this in tandem with whirling assault, like it just blended together so nicely, and you, like just with these two skills, we got a really good feel for how the monk would play, just kind of dancing around the battlefield.
And the effects artist did an amazing job with the ice and the graphical programmers as well. There's just some...
Look at that ice.
Nice.
Oh.
This is an old favorite, Sunder.
What the
big,
frick?
Punchy, pack clearing damage. And we came to Ed with a thing of, hey, can you make a slam that looks good over maybe like 2 seconds? What can a character do for 2 seconds?
Yeah, so a big thing I wanted to try and
What the
avoid
frick? I just copied over the armor stuff. And it's not working. It has no code in it. Was there a one thing down here? Was there one little fucker? God damn it.
The characters was with the big animations, not just holding a pose and shaking to build power. I wanted to make sure that the character stayed
Yeah, it was the
alive
little fucker the
and
whole
was doing
time.
Something interesting. So, yeah, I thought of the jump up in the air and the
Just like
slam
me
down
for
and
real.
work
What?
backwards
Look out
from
for the
there.
one fucker.
Another thing that this animation has, which isn't present in a lot of the slams, is he doesn't stick the hammer in the ground. The hammer bounces straight up, and that lets him get back into the next move, like, quite energetically. Again, keeps him alive. He doesn't stop and just hang out.
Okay. This is kind of a point where if you're like interested in what I'm doing, I can somewhat explain now. I'm starting to get the framework basic thing set up. So this case 1, alignment damage. You're seeing me roll the weapon. I'm guaranteeing that a weapon rolls a mod right now. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is, for this one modifier, it chooses you deal % more damage to enemies of certain types. So when I generate a sword every time, 26% to primal enemies, 13% to occult enemies. So within this, there's a bit of variation, but ultimately the variation is also adjusting the weight. So if it's more %, the weapon itself, and let me standardize what weapon is being generated. So it's always the same sword. Six weight, 17%. 3 weight, 6%. This one might be weighted way too high. Though this is one of the few remaining things that are a percentage-based damage that actually are like damage multipliers, so it's also quite good. Even though it's only to certain types of enemies. We're doing a new way to... Here, I got my bear example here. Let me see if I can show my bear example. making like cards for individual enemies. So where it says beast at the top, most enemies would be like primal beast would be their racial type. So like almost everything will have one of the 4 main types, so it's not too uncommon that you'd encounter like a primal enemy. And then the bottom's a whole bunch of stuff that instead of declaring specific attacks, they have triggers at certain conditions so that they don't have to always perfectly declare the exact right thing for their turn, but it still makes the players aware of what an enemy will do based on those conditions. And those are generated on here based on like just macros that are already on here. So that's like auto generating, so players will be aware of what is on the creature. Oh, those aren't sounds? What aren't sounds? I mean, technically, this bear does have a sound on it. Yeah. They're all different names because if they're the same name, it actually bugs and breaks. And yeah, it always says, yeah, it just has only one for there. It always says what the target is going to be. It's always consistent. So I should really only have to show players a enemy card one time. Boop, boop, boop. So basically what I'm going to be doing now that I have the structure set up is I'm going to make a couple of different weapon variable things. So like I'd like to make the next one be like increase the damage of the weapon, but absolutely plummet the accuracy, kind of so that everything isn't a better option, but it is an alternate option. And then weapons have a chance to get one of these where you see case 1, case 2, it'll pick one of these at random. And then like this example one, within the random, it has like multiple different choices and variables and numbers that can go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, they agree.
This is another mace ability with a lot of mobility. It's really shows that even with a gigantic hammer, you can have fun just moving around the battlefield. The first hit has massive bonus stun damage, letting you leave enemies vulnerable to apply that massive damage from the second strike.
Yeah, and this one shows off the moving variant that I was talking about before, like he just did it then. Just a little like quick step as he's swinging the hammer back. This one just felt great real quick. It's an office favorite. Also, just a small difference in this from previous animations is after he finishes the swing, he actually steps forward through. So the motion of the attack just keeps moving forward. There's no like forward, then back, then forward, then back, then forward. Yeah, it keeps, you just keep mowing through them. That's great.
Now here's one of our in-progress animations. This started out as a staff animation, was that right?
Yeah, this is my first attempt of Whirling Assault. I was being quite restrictive with how it played, and Rory told me off and said no, he has to move a lot further. So I came up with what it is now. But I still really like this animation, and I chucked a two-handed sword on it, and he reminded me of a certain white-haired monster hunter, and I thought that was really cool. So that's something.
I think this is all I actually need to do because it's all
like, yeah, this is a skill in the game. This is a
it's really basic. Writing is already like predetermined way earlier in the code and kind of calculates at the end to add all the added accuracy together. So I really don't, it's kind of that simple right now. So even this is the on and off is adding it to the weapon. So when you put the weapon on, when you take the weapon off, it adds this stat to you because it's more of like a global thing. And this one is the description. But for like this, I don't even have to add a description because it calculates all that at the end. So if I force this to case 2, when I roll a sword, accuracy is a little goofed and says plus minus. I can fix that. I know where it's doing that. But yeah, by default it'd be 3 to 7 on one of these swords, and that was 5 to 11, but minus accuracy.
sword thing now.
Sometimes it happens like that, yeah.
This is showing off some cool mobility that the
If you can choose
ranger
not
will
to step
have.
forward,
Their
they have not mentioned
The
that.
ranger is still quite static with their ranged attacks, but now they've got some cool tools that they can use to move around the battlefield when they need to.
Yeah, just playing with some backwards movement. Not much to say on this other than she used to do a backflip and that was a bit excessive.
I'm pretty sure the brief was like, what would Legolas do?
Oh yeah, and this one took a lot of iteration. Turns out just stabbing a guy is like tricky to get feeling right, while also being describable on a single skill gem with all the different attack times you could end up doing with it.
Stabbing a
The
guy.
visual demonstration I was given was just this. And I thought, surely I can do something cooler.
There's nothing that inspires the animators more than seeing how bad it would be if I was doing it.
A challenging thing with this actually was getting height variation. When your camera's very high up, striking at different heights is quite hard to read, especially when you're just dealing with arms. So the way I got around that was just moving it into the body. I was kind of thinking of Wing Chun, kind of rapid punch style thing. Yeah, this one just feels real cool. It's fun to kill lots of zombies with.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's all the skills we have to show off right now. It's time for some questions. All right.
Octavia.
Hello again, everyone. So there is a QR code up there behind me. It's pretty big, hard to miss. Go ahead and scan that if you want to send in any questions, and I will read them off here. The first question, very important one, we'll lead with a strong one. Does dodge roll work in towns?
I think yeah.
I feel like I've seen that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I can answer yes, it does. I tested
I'm
that
pretty
it
sure it does.
It does.
Yeah. I mean, if being a bear
The
currently
real
works
question
in
is, yes, can you
town,
be a
so-
bear in town? That's
Yeah.
that's the real question.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Because yes, you can. Currently.
The real question is, can you dodge roll as a bear in town? And the answer to
yes.
that is also yes.
Also, yes.
We need like a compilation, just a minute of a bear dodge rolling.
Yes, the QA is about the bear now.
Yeah.
So just a clarification here, do we still get to use skills from other classes if we want to?
Yes, you can use any skill, any combination of weapons, all the elements, just all the things.
And sort of a lead on from that is, I might be wrong in this bit of trivia, but I believe in PoE 1, the Templar is left-handed with a lot of his attacks and stuff, right? Is there still going to be room in PoE 2 for that sort of like individualized personality, like monk dodge rolling differently than other people, that sort of thing?
We have the technology.
Yeah, we can we can definitely, we have the capability of doing unique animations for the different characters.
I believe that what we're sort of doing is like when
That might not work.
We're much more likely to make a unique animation for the class we would expect the animation to be on. Yeah. So we'll probably have like quite a few of those for just like those cases, but then we're very unlikely to make a unique animation for like all the other classes that are not usually expected to use that skill. So they'll be able to do it. It's just they won't have that sort of unique flavor to them as much.
That does make sense.
Yeah, some characters have an additive layer as well to just hold their shoulders differently or whatever fits their pose. Yeah.
We've got a question here. How much control do players have over inbuilt movements on skills? Do support gems change the movement types, or are there other ways for players to influence this mechanic?
We already have some investment on the tree to specialize in using your dodge roll in a different way for a dexterity character, but a lot of it...
There's also shift attack. Holding shift has some influence in some cases on some skills, but it's all very much like skill by skill. Like there's also now the ability, although we haven't really utilized that much, where they've got the skill options area in the skill screen. So if there are particular things we want to allow the player to specialize about a skill, so for example, the always shift attack button is now in there. So like, yeah, there might be a few cases where we want to add a few things like that, but yeah, it's really skill by skill. Like you don't know what you need to do on a skill until you've tried it.
There's some of the skills already have custom behavior for targeting, like for example, killing palm will focus on a nearby colorable target, even if you target another enemy, just to make sure you get that power charge, since that's usually what you're using it for.
All right. Given so many skills have inbuilt mobility, is it then less important in some ways to scale attack and cast speed, or is that an equally valuable stat, would you say, as it is in PoE 1?
It's always going to offer you more survivability because you're going to get your hit out faster, but we're still keeping plenty of mechanics that reward you for using slow attacks or
But I mean,
your
part
next
of
attack.
the idea is to make it possible to make a build that is slower in PoE 2.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah,
we want
yeah,
the fast builds too, but we also want to be possible to be slow. In PoE 1, it's just not really possible, really. I mean, there's some things we've done over the years to try and make that more of a thing. You know, there was like the sort of two-hand exerted stuff and a few other things like that, but it's just, you know, like, we wanted to make it a lot more of an option.
It's rarely a bad idea to get a little bit more attack speed, but going out of your way to get it is nowhere necessary anymore.
Okay. Another question that's more of a clarification than anything else is you mentioned that skills are restricted by weapon type now. Does that mean that all skills can be used with only a single weapon type, including spells, or is this an attack limitation?
It's an attack limitation. But there are a few fancy spells, like the ethereal blade skills now will use your daggers, but most spells are for any weapon type you want. They're a lot better with caster weapons.
Just for clarification, when you say ethereal, you mean ethereal knives?
Ethereal knives, yeah.
Probably
Not neat to them, neat to me. That the possibility of this item rolling giga accuracy, even though it has tiny little baby damage, might actually be a usable thing. And that's what I like about this system of just like moving the numbers around, buffing one thing but taking away from another thing. And then, yeah, I'm just going to try and fill out as many of these cases as I can that are unique mods to a weapon that can appear. But also the other thing that I want to do is like I want to have a note down here, so it's going to be like Taylor name equals blah 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 blah, because I also want this exact same thing to be an output where if a player finds an item that can modify their item in this exact way, that I want them to get an item that says like, hey, apply this to an item with a tailoring slot, which is that circle up here, and this is what it will do to your item. It'll give it accuracy and it'll reduce damage. And then it'll have like an item name, like something, or, you know, kind of like theme it for whatever. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to double down on that right now, because basically what it needs to be is a description of what the item would do and then create an item instead of applying it to a weapon. And it needs to describe it in a way that me, the DM, can go, oh, that's exactly what that does, and here's the code that I need to apply to the weapon so that it will work. That's been the tricky thing bounced around in my head. Otherwise, like, the system is working just fine for me, of, like, trade-offs. You know, subbing on Ster 2? Yeah, this channel is, like, not a real channel. If you want to sub, you can sub to Ster 1, like, the regular Ster channel, and those notifications actually show up here still.
Internal name I wasn't aware of.
I don't think are there even any other spells that require a weapon? I think it's just those knife ones, right?
We'll see when we get to the
Yeah, we'll see when
Templar
we get to-
skills. Yeah.
No way, these are questions from the
there
crowd. The Path of Exile community is smarter even than the Rick and Morty community. They're all data analysts and geniuses. So.
Plans for, and this may already be in the demo, but are there any plans for the dodge roll mechanic being modified by itemization?
There's already we already have some passives on the tree that modify the dodge roll in some way, so we're definitely going to have mechanics that affect it. We've yet to really lock in exactly how far we'll go with that.
It's unexplored space to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's Path of Exile. How can we stop ourselves from doing crazy stuff with anything that we can do anything to?
Yeah, we're not very good at saying no. Well, the programmers are. Can the dual specialization weapon swap delay time be reduced by stats like attack speed or cast speed, or is that a fixed interval?
We are going to have stats specifically to increase the swap speed, and we're looking at different weapon types having different swap times as well, so it's easier to swap to lighter weapons than it is to a big heavy weapon. Yeah.
I'm learning about that on stage.
I do have a thing that I forgot to mention during the talk that I realize I want to show off, which is mana costs are not paid instantly at the start of the skill now.
Yes.
They're paid over a time up to the point where the skill starts doing something.
So what you're saying is like Wolson. That's a great idea.
which does mean if you get stunned out, or if you dodge roll out, or you just cancel, you will save most of the mana, so you have much less of an issue of wasting all your resources, meaning it's okay for us to have larger cost skills, knowing that you're not going to lose it all if you get stunned out, or you decide to change your mind at the last minute.
Yeah, just to clarify, like that system is just purely beneficial for the player. So we've not got much time left. We'll go to the final question here, which is on the gem crafting. How do Vol skills interact with gem crafting? I don't know that we know.
I think Val skills we probably don't, like, isn't there enough to say there? I think they might not be.
Not really. We want to do some real cool stuff with them, and we're not locked in
we're
yet.
probably not ready to talk about Val skills, I'd say. But it's definitely going to be. It's definitely a thing.
Yeah, we shouldn't really design them on stage right now, but yeah.
By committee. All right, well, I think that is our time for this talk, so
Awesome.
head on out.
Sweet. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
As long as it's still the good shit from Wolcen. From having played Wolcen recently, I think they have some of the best design skills like ever. Like every skill in that game feels good and is kind of has like a fun to play with unique mechanic to it. But I really wish people would fucking rip off Wolcen a little bit more. Because if the PoE skills were like Wolcen skills, man, I'd be happy. Coming up. Oh yeah, it was directly after. I was curious in this. Because he's doing a playthrough of, I think they gave them, well, he'll probably explain it. But I would like to see a real player play the game rather than the devs intentionally go slow and play in cinematic mode and see how like different it is, and reading the actual skills and trying to be a little bit gooder. Though I don't think they give them a lot of time, to be honest. Everyone's getting to play the demo. It looks like he gets to go through he gets about 30 minutes. That's decent. Big Slam Warrior. I'm curious about Big Slam Warrior as well. I want to lick that guy's tongue. What? Excuse me. Sorry. Let me figure out how I would do the description of this and how I would print that out literally ever. I don't think I can piggyback this code and do that. I think it would have to be separate. What the fuck is this? Wait, what is this? Wait, what? Why are we doing a slow camera pan? I thought we were starting.
Stuff in the previous app. Find the right person for the job.
I agree with Mathel personally. They give people really weak characters. I mean, I don't know how much of it is the game you are given weak characters, or they said it was harder.
Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and slight technical difficulties there. Some genius pressed a button they shouldn't have. It was me, and we needed to relog, just, you know, find the right person for the job. So today I'm going to be going through Path of Exile 2 demo, and I'm going to be jumping straight into Act 4 with the Warrior. It looks pretty intimidating, pretty cool though. Overall, it's just been a big, overwhelming day. I've heard that there's been some good stuff in the previous acts, so we're going to jump in and hit the Act 4. With one of the new classes, Warrior. Sounds beefy. King's March. All right. So we start out, there's an Alva, there's apparently a good few directions to go in this act.
I was coding. Did he say this was Act 2? Act 2? I have mixed feel. Like, people were asking about the story. Alva being a relevant character in the act that you summon is kind of already like, she's the time travel girl. Time travel's fucking whack. If the whole story is based around time travel, I may be a little sad. But you know, that remains to be seen. Act 4? He said 4? How many acts are there? Because I think they were lowered in scope. They're like, there's not going to be 10 acts for PoE 2. It might be just 5 or 6. A game developer or a game cheater? I am a game developer.
Mini map back. That feels pretty good. Just get my bearings. Okay, let's see what we got. Piles of gold. Can spend at vendors.
At this particular moment.
Some physical damage on a crumbling mace. Warrior Great Helm. Yep. Bit of life. Bit of everything. Pretty nice looking setup. Now we press Alva.
Oh, King's March. It's been months since I had a bath.
Oh,
If you're looking
stinky
for
Alva.
options
Okay,
here,
I'm in.
You'll want
Bah.
to sell your share of these vile artifacts first. Talk to Rog here. He's our buyer. I'll have to attend to a few things, but don't worry. We'll see each other again when the time comes.
Talk to Rog. All right, I think we need to check out a few other things. What do we got? Warrior Scarlet Strike level 45. Life per second. That's not a whole lot of life for a level 45 character. Something tells me we're going to be dying a few times. Bunch of minus chaos, some fire, cold res. That's nice. Pretty intuitive panel for your resistances. As we all know, we do need resistances in this game.
See, that's what I heard. I don't know. I've loosely read the Reddit. Is that they were saying, oh, they gave them characters that like weren't very good, and I think the example they gave is like they had low life and they didn't have capped resistances and they were getting hurt. That's not like you usually cap resistances as you're going through the campaign if you're playing like softcore anyway. But yeah.
What do we got here? Talk to Rog, Preacher.
Friend, I have urgent news for you. Time is short, and the unmaking of the world is nigh. Please, listen to what I have to say.
Says nothing.
Go on.
Not interested.
All right.
Damn.
Apparently, we don't care. I like that. Perhaps I've already chosen my quest path there.
I heard they said there was
bit of
0
wealth.
life on the tree.
Tops us all up. Danig, Rogue.
That
boy Rogue?
okay, I was saying earlier, I don't think resistances being in the game, if they want to make it new player friendly, like they should really just get rid of it. But life not being on the tree might be the best thing possible, because the #1 new player mistake is I didn't take life on the tree, and it's boring to take life on the tree, so that will always be a problem. That's not like, yeah, you kind of got to own up to that and just give players life.
What can I do for you?
Hook me up, Rogue.
I'm Rob, the local trade guild contact for Kingsmarch. I'll take this haul off your hands and set up an account for you. This looks like quite the pile of treasure. It should be more than enough to hire a ship. The only captain available is new to the job, but I know her. Her name's Makoru. She'll get you where you need to go.
Boat League?
Alrighty. Hiring a ship.
Boat League!
Has he got some stuff for us? Alright, you can use your gold and already grab some flasks or +3 to all cold spell skill gem stuff.
Is this
Yo, is that just like God?
this takes place, I believe they have said in the past, like 20 years after PoE 1.
RNG if I needed this, or does everyone get one of these? Better amulet? No, we're good. All right.
Good day.
I have a charter. Now, let's see about that
Come
ship.
back anytime.
Let's see about that ship. Where are we heading off? It's very alien doing things on someone else's PC setup and just the whole thing here live in person. Going over to Makoru.
We're looking for work, yes. If you have enough credit with the Trade Guild. Let me see here. Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Dock leave.
I can take you wherever you need. We'll set sail right now if you
Boat
want.
League!
Do we want? We could hit the set sail button? Yeah, sounds pretty. Oh my god. That's some serious business. We can go to wait, can we just go wherever we want? Isle of Kin. Stink of soul fight sears the wind. All right. The Karui dare the cliffs to prove themselves ready. Buwara's Shrike Island. We can go all the way to Eternal Prison. Something still clatters on the bars. That sounds pretty ominous. A tropical paradise settled by a friendly tribe. Countless ships lay broken upon the shoals. You know, I reckon we go real ominous like. Bizarro's Prison. Explore the prison. What do we got to work with here? Armor Breaker. Attack with a forceful blow, knocking enemies back and weakening their armor. Requires a mace. Forceful blow, knocking back, weakening their armor. Okay. Rolling Slam. That's a slow cast time. Big mana. Yep. Spirit. Yep. Ancestrally boosted slams. Slam the ground to stun enemies and knock them away, then continuing forward and performing devastating second slam. Q Supercharged Slam. These are some big words. Channel to charge up a heavy swing, drawing earth from the ground to enlarge.
Bigger, even bigger
Release
slam.
Release to slam the ground, dealing damage in an area around the impact. Infernal Cry. Pretty familiar with that one. Taunt some enemies.
Oh wait, they're oh yeah, they were making the goddess like a main character. I remember hearing in the campaign that you like save the goddess.
Holy, that's got some impact to it.
Have they said what they did with the ascendancies in PoE 2? Fuck lab.
Thunder as before, it feels like. Let's see.
All my homies hate lab.
So what do we got here? And that's ancestrally boosted, and then Armor Breaker. Yo, I'm gonna be dying. Now that's a big boy attack. Supercharged Slam. Attack time 1. So can we cancel? Oh, we can point it in a different direction. There you go. And Herald of Ash reserves all of my spirit, but looks pretty cool. Let's see if we can attack something without Herald of Ash to begin with. So we're just exploring the prison, are we? All right, straight in we go. Dude, I am not happy with how this is going so far. You gotta be kidding. What is this thing? Extra cold damage and exposure haste aura. Alright, I think we'll go for the check.
Wow.
Look.
That is 3 enemies.
That's all we gotta say. I think we'll take our Herald of Ash now. Alright, what do we got? Supercharged Slam. So I went with a fatty right click, and I think that may have got me killed. Armor Breaker, Supercharged Slam, Infernal Cry, Leap Slam, and then Sunder. Maybe we need a Sunder from a bit more long range. Need some strats for this. That is some slow attack time there. I need to check out my flasks as well, to be honest, so...
When he restarted the checkpoint, did it reset those dogs and you have to fight the dogs again, or was I not looking? I'm kind of half paying attention. Feels bad. The goddess! The lab! He's in the lab, dude!
Reduced recovery 25 recovered instantly while on low life, and then just a regular. Oh man, did I pick the lab? That would be typical me. I have to run a lab essentially. Within these walls, Lady Justice. Yep, okay, that's a lot. Oh yeah, and that's our dodge, is it?
Dogs didn't show up. That's kind of interesting. If you died to a crazy rare, seems like it reset everything.
Okay.
I think they mentioned that during the main keynote, that things reset after they died.
Any lab enjoyers in the chat? Oh, wait, no, we don't want to go there. How's that? One of those. Man, things hit hard. I told you, it's just we don't have that much life right now on this character. I reckon they stitched me up. You know me, I build a big life on my characters, and it's not my intuitive style here to be a bit on the lower end of life.
Lab, there's lab enjoyers.
What are we opening? I don't know if
there's some twisted fucks in this world.
Let's press a big Q. How's that look? Double hit. So we're armor breaking, knocking back. It's always pretty weird picking up someone else's build as well. Okay. Maybe I
Yeah,
jump
I'm
in and
curious
knock
how
that?
trash
Wait,
the
what's happening
character
here?
is,
Pasted.
to be
Okay.
honest.
Jumping over. Gotta press mana. I'm getting out of here. Wait, what's the dash like? Okay. It's honestly kind of different.
You get stunned so
to
much.
usual PoE gameplay, and it's pretty difficult to
That's what I was
control. It
saying.
feels.
A melee character like this should not have to ever worry about stun threshold, that they should be making gem supports for stun
Big
threshold.
attack, big smash.
Current PoE 1 has a huge problem where melee characters need to have life defense, accuracy. They need more things than casters. And then the ultimate result is that they're still in close range and weaker because they had to invest in like melee strike range, accuracy, ancestral call, and stun threshold. Can't be stunned, life. It's feeling like a new variant of the exact same problem.
Let's pick up some
That
of
they
these
don't
items.
just
This guy's getting rezzed. Or
like
am I
all these
blind?
big slams should just have a built-in you cannot be stunned while this is active.
Again, mace, locked door. Okay, so we do want to open that door. Let's press in some buttons real quick. That doesn't unleash anything. No, we're good. Okay. Is that gonna be for my single target then? Knocking and weakening their armor. What does that even mean? Like that.
I agree with Ster. Nice.
So the sensitivity on the mouse is a bit lower than I'd like, and that's kind of why we had the technical difficulties. I was trying to change that. Big slam. All right, not bad, not bad. So where are we headed to? Let's get a mini-map overlay happening. I do love my mini-map overlay. I'm just kind of not used to it anymore from a certain other game I was trying and then ultimately not in love with.
I can tell too, like,
But we won't talk about that.
feels obvious now
Prison.
that the
Okay.
best way forward was for them to separate the
Jump in,
games,
and then
because
hit with a barrel.
they really want this
Hit
to
with
be
barrel roll. Okay, so you're not rolling through enemies.
slow.
Interesting. I thought maybe you could like just
I
cheese your way
think
through.
Diablo 4 wanted the same thing early in their development,
One of these, give him a deep slam, hit him with
and
one
I
of
don't
these.
think
Get more in
it's
tune with my attacks, 'cause,
sustainable.
we are going to be coming across some serious business soon, I imagine.
Like, in theory, it has so many benefits of being
how am I
able,
gonna
like,
do
with
that?
tactical combat and rolling around, avoiding stuff, and this and that and that. Like, more time to react to
Not
things.
too wrong to just be a Sunder builder.
But,
Jump in with hit with one of these and then combo. with
you
one of
inevitably
these.
rub up against the fact that it's funner to go faster. And it'll get there. And I think that's what happened in D4 development, is that they start out the Barbarian, and he's balanced like shit, and he's a trash character to level with. And they end it with Sorcerer, and they have all the cool enhancements, and all of the enemies explode, and all this crazy shit. Regardless of how they're balanced at endgame, which really doesn't matter, because there is no endgame.
Who's resin at this point? Who? What the? All right. Feels like we need to move on a little bit. Actually, I see.
They said they want it
Wait, there's
slow to
one
be
more.
viable. I think
I
you
think
make
I missed
slow
all this.
viable by things like Heist, where you are
steamy
slowed
lab
down by
action.
mechanics
Okay.
rather than clear speed. So in Heist, you would intentionally make a more
Pointed
tanky
mark.
character because
Very
you don't
constant
need
without
to kill as
anything
many
is gonna be
things, and
better.
your currency per minute is not
Service
determined by
charge.
how fast you can do things, because you're limited by doors opening.
It's not too far off. Have I got any currency? Boom. Transmute. Okay.
So I think
that's
Heist is actually brilliant in
I'm
that
not
regard.
gonna
I don't think a lot of
go
people
there.
look at it that way.
Their armor and everything looks like. Okay.
So I just wish there was more content like that, but there is not a lot, and Heist is not the perfect solution, because opening doors,
Swoop on past this guy.
not the best.
GG noob. And we got one more lever over here. I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified of coming across a boss right now. Because I am not ready.
Just press V to open door. I think people would like heist a lot more if the doors auto started opening based on your proximity and you didn't have to press the button. That would help. But it is the waiting, because I think your clear speed ends up being faster than the doors open. So you kill everything around it and then you wait. But if you're a little bit more tanky, then you kind of like just walk through the enemies and...
Would have blasted through by now. What's this guy
There's a
got?
path there for it to be the alternative to zooming. And that's also why heist is so rewarding.
Definitely a little special. All right, let's see. I'm gonna hit him with a Q. Okay, straight again. Let's see what these caustic orbs look like.
Yeah, I also just fully expect that. I don't know.
The usual ones. Okay.
Oh, there they are. There's the we chase you with poison. Oh goodness.
Ember Great Axe. Is that a pure fire damage two-hander? And a spear. Look at that. Hits him with a combust thing. Jump on him for no good reason. Hit him with another huge attack. Okay. That's what happens after. Anything? It's the mouse sensitivity, I'm telling you. Alright, what's the knight armor? Big, fancy looking armor. So that's a pure fire damage axe, okay. Crossblade spear, alright. We'll keep exploring so you can see me die to a proper boss, I think. Because, that's for sure gonna happen. That seems to be a decent attack, right click.
Moves forward a set amount of distance. Yeah, a lot of the melee skills do move you forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Press that. Let's try
Yeah, I
and
see what you're
press that.
saying.
A mail belt. Reduce flask
They
charges
did say in the
used.
dev talk earlier that a lot of those skills that move you forward also try and move the enemies with you, probably to keep them in the area of effect so you don't like go past them. But I'm not seeing too much of that when he does the double slam that like moves him forward. I'm not seeing like it carry enemies.
You gotta be joking. Look at the implicit on that belt.
Though they said their intention was that it pulls the enemies with
One
you.
of those right now. Alrighty.
We're also seeing some ruthless ass loot.
It's alright, we're chilling. Yeah, these rats do not mess around. In the initial announcement, Neon did almost die to a few of these. It looked pretty lethal. And yeah, I think I got scammed at the very start of this playthrough. Basically just a pack of unkillable mobs. How far in we going? All the way. Okay. Hit him with space, not too shabby.
I like the ruthless loot. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Mixed.
Feel like we're getting somewhere. Huge leaps. That solitary confinement. Ooh. What do we got here? Nothing? Okay. This can only end in tears.
I would like a middle ground. But it feels like this gameplay so far has been more towards ruthless than a middle ground.
Okay, no, this is fine.
He's not gonna be able to attack this. That's what I'm saying. You should not be able to get stunned out of these slow slams with a mace.
Whoa.
Just at all.
What do I do with this? Is it just pure
Oh shit, we
environmental?
drowning? The stage looks awesome.
This is a temporal proximity bubble. Oh my god. Dude, I am getting wrecked right now. This may be one of those we shouldn't fight this thing style situations.
Yup. Yeah, that water. This stage looks awesome.
This guy's way too strong for me. I'm about to run out of flasks. Alright, tactical retreat. We gotta fight something else.
Benevolently gets crept up. Well, I'm sure as well, if you were making any action RPG, you would intentionally start
Tactical retreat.
as slow and lootless as possible so it can creep
Do another barrel
to
roll.
more areas.
Hit him with a barrel roll.
Oh my god, that roll!
Oh, this is... So this is a huge boss, right? Like, act boss. I reckon got to be an Uber, one of the end game pieces
Bro,
of
this is
content.
ruthless.
We're already here.
Also, there are a lot of
surprisingly.
gold drops, so I'm very curious in the value of gold.
Wait, no. Flasks. We still need flasks. I said flasks. Wait, what's he doing? Okay, yep, dodge that.
Oh, I'm kind of just
got
full
a
watching it at the
flask.
moment.
Ah. That wind up. Alright, here we go. That's how it's done. Alright, we've got half a flask or something. I got this. This guy, absolutely ridiculous. I dodged when I didn't need to. That's it. 1v1. That is unreal. All right, what do we got here? Not a huge upgrade, wouldn't you know it?
Is what Chris wants PoE to be. I mean, I like it.
Explore solitary confinement.
It raises concerns, but also I enjoyed his fight with that enemy. I was engaged. I full screened.
What the?
If enemies actually deal enough damage for killing them to not be boring, what PoE 1 currently ends up being, and I'm thinking specifically of Mirror of Kalandra, where there was a lot of enemies where players were particularly the super juiced essences, where you could build a character that was so tanky it would sustain any damage the essence could do to you, and you had Quinn like AFKing with it auto bone shattering the enemy, and they just would walk away, and it took like 10 minutes to kill the one mob.
We're exploring.
So it's like, because he's getting hurt and because there's a lot of considerations and dodges, I don't mind them being tanky because you actually have to manage a lot of shit. But current PoE is if a mob is tanky, there is no mechanic to engage with. You just keep hitting it, and you probably have enough life sustain that you never stop.
It looks stunning.
I honestly don't believe the final game will look like this. I also
Yeah, these guys are lethal.
expect,
Got fully scammed
like,
with a
if
rare
with
bomb.
another year before beta,
Oh god, trying to barrel roll out of here.
I think even within internal development, power creep is inevitable.
Leap slam out of there. Okay, big close stun on that one. I like it. Can not believe how overtuned those guys are. I'm calling for nerfs already. Oh my word.
The advent of PoE 2 doesn't stop them from doing it in 1. My hope for PoE 1 is that they give up on the idea that it's going to be PoE 2. I think that's like what they are basically saying, is that they're not gonna, we don't want to give up on PoE 1 for the players that like that kind of style. And a lot of design decisions have been in an attempt to merge the two together, and PoE 1 has been getting a lot of nonsensical changes that don't really mean anything, that are ready for an attempt to switch to PoE 2. But now that they've finally given up on that and been like, nah, we don't need to like introduce all of this stuff, that will make sense later. Also, there was a popular clip going around where they're saying that like the last 3 leagues for PoE 1 have been made by 8 people, which makes a lot of sense, that they've recently hired more people because they realized it wouldn't be sustainable with the 8, now that they're more committed to a long-term PoE 1 being a separate game. I think just in general, if you look at the direction of the season reveal trailer they did for the next league, it's a monstrous amount of power creep and just insane bullshit that I think they would have been extremely hesitant before in adding, because they wanted PoE 2 to exist. And if you were going to merge the 2 games, then it's like, dude, I wouldn't put wand casting mines that they were showing. I wouldn't want to take that step forward as a developer, knowing that we're supposed to merge these 2 games at some point.
Alright, so what do we do here?
How the fuck they do Sanctum with 8 people? I think Sanctum started a long time ago, because if you actually go back in time and look at the initial reveal for Path of Exile 2, like 4 years ago, It was on the Sanctum maps. So like that map layout is not new. It's not like they, you know, it's hard to say like when what was done by how many people.
So how do I do that? Do I have to drag him over from one end to the other?
And I still think that Sanctum had a lot to be desired for myself personally. Like I like the general theme of it, but it was pretty content lacking. And the parts that made Sanctum the best were added later. Like Sanctum was not feature complete on launch. It was the only season that ever did that they added stuff later.
That is some intense action. I think that's all.
I believe they corrected the statement to be 20 people.
Unfortunately, didn't get as far as I'd like, but that is
Yeah, it'd be hard to say a consistent 8 across the time span that they're talking about.
Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the rest of the show.
But that's already like 6 times, with 8 people, it's 6 times more people than Update TF2, so like, that's a lot of people. What did it say, 9,000 people contributed to D4? I don't know. I mean, if you look at the amount of voice actors in D4 alone, it's hard to really compare development versus how many people they have accredited. There was an interview with Kriparian earlier on. I'm gonna hop back to that.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. We have some dev Q&A. There's going to be a few of these, and we are starting with none other than Jonathan. So Jonathan, it's been a pretty exciting start to the day.
Absolutely. I mean, it was much more exciting for me up on stage there, man. It's a yeah, it's quite a thing.
It is quite a thing. I think people seem very happy with what they've heard about PoE 2.
I really hope so. Yeah, like there was a huge amount of work that went into getting all that stuff sorted out, and yeah, I'm definitely glad it went okay. Apart from the minor death incident, but should be all right.
That's part of Path of Exile.
Absolutely. I should hope so. Anyway.
Well, soon enough, people here at ExileCon will get to play it a little bit. We'll have some gameplay showcases even right after this, actually, with Zizaran. That should be pretty fun. But first, I personally had a few questions about PoE 2, and hopefully those will answer some questions that many of you have. And if not, again, there will be more dev interviews throughout the event. All right, why don't we kick it off here? So we saw that PoE 2 in the demo, it was a little bit slower gameplay paced than what people experience if they play Path of Exile 1 right now.
Right.
But from what I've seen in the gameplay showcases, you guys generally try to slow it down for the purpose of the showcase.
That's true. That's true.
So what is the goal, I guess, is the question. So do we want to change Path of Exile 2 pacing versus Path of Exile 1?
So to be honest, it will be a little bit slower, but kind of not at the 50, sorry to get technical, but not at the 50th percentile. Like I think that part of the issue is in PoE 1 is that like, there's so many multiplicative mechanics that go on that like at the sort of 95th percentile, at the top end of player, you get this like absolute ridiculousness with like, 600 projectiles per second and that sort of shit. And it's like, well, it's like 600 projectiles per second, it's like you just can't see fucking anything, and so you don't have any ability to respond to boss mechanics. Like I don't think it's as fun as when you actually have, like 60 projectiles per second or something like that, you know what I mean? Like we still want it to be ridiculous, it's just that we don't want it to be like at the very top end, you don't want it to be quite as ridiculous as it is. And it's honestly just so that you actually get some interesting counterplay with the bosses, you get some more like stuff going on there. And so that's kind of a thing that we'd like to do. But then we also do always tend to keep it a little bit slower in the showcases just because, as you're saying, you want to see what's going on, you want to show people what's happening. So yeah, like basically, we were using like a lot it's in the demos as well. Here, there's a lot of like two-handed weapons, which are a bit slower. Just once again to sort of get the idea of the.
Well, that's what I use.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's like basically we try to show off the game because it looks nicer for like when you're, especially when you're trying to appeal to a new audience. You want to show it off as best as you can. The bit slower just makes it look a bit nicer. But I mean, at the same time, we're seeing that we've still got like all the triggering mechanics and like triple casting and all that sort of stuff. Like all that stuff really will allow you to do the kind of ridiculousness that you expect from PoE still, for sure. Like I certainly wouldn't want you to like. I still want a player to feel like, oh, I totally broke the game with this bullshit that I'm doing here. Like it needs to feel like you still broke it, just not actually break it. Like I don't want the servers to actually be on fire.
like they sometimes
Well, if it's just for a little while, you know, it's worth the moment.
Right.
A big one is I heard the audience kind of, you know, wooing when they saw gold dropping off of the monsters
that's a funny one.
in PoE 2.
Yeah, we never even mentioned it at the keynote, and it's funny because it's like it's not exactly like some big headline feature of, you know, oh, there's gold in this game. Who's ever heard of that, right? It's obviously, you know, yeah, it is what it is. Of all the things that we did in PoE 2, I would say that that's like the only, like every other decision we make, we're like, does this feel like PoE or does it feel like not PoE? And like the gold thing is probably the only thing where we're like, this isn't really a PoE thing, and we acknowledge that. But at the same time, I think it is actually important to make the drop system better. Okay, it's like fundamentally you have this constraint. If you're going to kill a monster and it drops nothing, it feels like shit. And then at the same time, therefore if you have to drop something, you can't obviously drop a rare on every frickin' monster you kill, so therefore you have to be able to drop something. And honestly, gold does actually work. Like, there's a reason games have it. But the important thing that we don't want to do with gold is have an economy based around it. Like, it is supposed to not be something that, you know, like I don't expect players to be trading with gold to each other. They're going to be trading with other currency items as you would hope they would in PoE. Like, that's our thing.
Well, I guess the follow-up question would be, what do you want someone to use gold for?
So the main thing they should be using gold for is fixing, like, especially during campaign, fixing deficiencies in their build. Like, if you need this thing to be able, you know, if you need like the right resistance, if you need something like that. We've overhauled the shop very significantly to make it so that there's much more likely to be things inside the shop that will be able to deal with problems that you have. Like, if you're fighting a boss, you don't have the resistances, you should be able to deal with that very quickly. There's also rares that you can find in there sometimes for certain things, and we also make it so that it doesn't change every level. Like, you get new stuff getting added to the shop that sticks around for a while, so that you get a chance to actually save up and buy it if you see something that you want. And there's also gambling. So like, by gambling I mean like buying a base type where you don't know what rare it will be, and you will be able to get uniques that way.
That's similar to Ruthless with gold.
Absolutely. Well, there's a reason we were testing this, right? We were like, see what's going on here. Like, we want to see if it actually works, like when players are exposed to it. That was absolutely a test. We were like, let's see, can PoE even work with gold in it? Like, you know, and there's been some changes since we did the Ruthless with gold test, but yeah, it was just interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, personally, I actually really liked Ruthless with gold.
Right.
The one thing I didn't like very much was the currency conversions through the vendors was disabled.
Yes.
So I was sitting on hundreds of jewelers, but I just needed like 3 fusings.
Right. Yeah. So there's definitely been tweaks since then, and there's definitely great feedback. Like, it's one of the whole reason we ran Ruthless with gold was to absolutely see like what sort of shakes out. It's very hard to do those kinds of tests in the office because it's like the amount of play time you'd have to like work out whether the economy is going to work is pretty extensive. So
I'm gonna spin it all the way different outside of mechanics on this one. My first time in New Zealand was coming to ExileCon the first time around, and it was a wonderful experience. And it was really the first time that I realized just how much of New Zealand themes and culture kind of exist, at least in part, in Path of Exile.
For sure, yeah.
And it was such a wonderful thing to see. Like, I would go to a museum, and then I'd see something that was quite similar to what I've been playing for years in Path of Exile. So how forwarded is this theming in Path of Exile 2?
I would say even more so. I mean, the Kuroi have an
Crip, you answered your own question.
Them. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's obviously, you know, we're inspired by the stuff we see, and honestly, it's really nice to be able to, you know, like take inspiration from what we see around us. Like, we never see this stuff in games. You know, there are islands which like are full of like the sort of New Zealand vegetation that I guess Americans don't tend to see very often. So it's really nice to have all that stuff and make all that stuff, and you know, like it's just great to have some of that stuff going on.
That's awesome. Back to a few mechanics, and again, I want to reiterate that, you know, our information right now is just what we saw in the gameplay highlight in the presentation. We might see a little bit more from the players around, but we saw that in the presentation there were just, I think, 3 life flasks and 2 mana flasks on each of the characters. Is that just because they're kind of low level, or is there going to be more of a focus on the life and mana flasks?
I mean, I don't know that I'd still call it a focus, but at the same time, we do want to make sure that life and mana flasks aren't useless. Like, they should actually have a purpose. There was some changes to utility flasks because we wanted to make sure that, let me get this exactly right, we tended to remove things that lasted for a duration from utility flasks. So the utility flasks are more responsive to the situation. So for example, if you are currently burning, then if you use a flask to get rid of that, then it will give you, it will remove the burning and make you immune for a while. But if you don't have burning on you right now, it doesn't do that. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing to sort of make it so that there's some like counterplay going on with it, rather than just I just have it on all the time. It's effectively just another effect on my character.
Well, you have that kind of as the affix system in PoE 1 right now.
Yes, sorry, I'm not up to date with PoE 1, so
I think generally that system is pretty well received.
Right, okay, yeah.
So that's good to hear.
Right, that's exactly the kind of stuff, though, that, I mean, so that change, if it's in PoE 1 now, that was definitely a, like, PoE 2 thing. And
okay.
I think they took it, like, so the thing is so just because people probably don't know this, I'm not involved in PoE 1 at all at this point. I'm game director on PoE 2, I'm focusing on that. And then Chris, we talk, obviously, about designs that we're doing, and he definitely, you know, I suspect that some of those things just filter their way down.
So that's how you're doing flasks.
Exactly,
I'll
right?
take that, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So Chris is in charge of PoE 1, and he sort of making the decisions there.
I wanted to kind of double down on the mana situation a bit, because we have the separation of mana for skills and mana for reservation with auras.
Absolutely.
What kind of focus are you going to put on mana? Like if you just took away auras from being mana-based in PoE 1 right now, everyone just has way too much mana for everything.
Exactly. So we will, costs will absolutely go up. And part of the balance problem that we have is you pretty much just can't really balance skills with mana use particularly easily in PoE 1 because there's just this expectation that everyone's going to reserve as much as they can. And the thing is, because reservation exists, it means that people are going to always push the line as far as they can, and then they start complaining if then skills cost too much.
Of course.
That they don't have any frickin' mana. And it's like, well, yeah. But so you'd think you'd be able to say, oh, yeah, well, that's your problem. But we've realized a much more sort of, you know, I guess, once you learn about our player psychology, you realize that no, you have to actually, if you want that not to happen, like people always spin down to the line, so you have to do something about it. So Spirit is the response to that, and it means that now you know you have an amount of Spirit to spend. If you want to make trade-offs on your build, then those trade-offs should be made in your passive tree, rather than being a sort of like thing that you're doing that. So you still get to make that choice of like, do I want you know, like, do I want to get more mana on the tree or not? There's also the scepters. Scepters give Spirit as well, and that's how that escalates through the game. So if you're playing a minion build, it's very likely, you don't have to, but it's very likely you'll want to use scepters to help with that.
Well, as a minion enjoyer, it wasn't said for more than a split second, but I caught that minions are going to reserve Spirit.
They do, yes. That's so you'll be able to have more. So if you want more minions, get more Spirit. That's the way. So we're trying mostly to avoid having like hard limits on like number of zombies. You can just cast as many zombies as you have Spirit to cast them. So then it's sort of up to you to choose what this.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought of actually asking if there's a way where you can have enough Spirit to summon like all the available minions, kind of like a Lord of the Dead type of situation.
It should be possible if you spec correctly to be able to do that.
Okay.
The other thing with Scepters, by the way, as a base type, is that all of the mods of them are all like does this to nearby allies.
I
so
see.
that means that Scepters are a great, like they're sort of like a minion supporting thing, but also just like for auras and stuff like that as well, since they give you the Spirit. You can choose to be like a Templar, you know, with like a flail in one hand and a scepter in the other. That's like a viable thing, or minions or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but
well, back to the other side of Spirit. I kind of wanted to know if there was a different design in auras, because in PoE 1 they have they're crushing your mana pool. It's really hard to use more than like 2, 3, maybe 4 if you're heavily invested, because now you obviously expect everyone to use some form of auras.
But you'll notice the cast on the trigger gems also reserve Spirit.
Oh.
And so then the choice between triggering versus auras is now also a potential trade-off.
I see.
So there's other stuff going on. Like there's we really want to make sure that there are different, like entirely different styles of things you can use your Spirit for. So then it definitely feels like, you know, I mean, obviously you can try to do more than one of those things by just getting more Spirit if that's what you want to do in your build. But it's still like, you know, there's definitely a lot more sort of interesting options there about how to trade one off for the other.
Well, right now in PoE 1, you can get like an enormous amount of damage, or honestly, in some cases, all of your defensive capabilities through your auras.
Right.
Do you foresee having such
that can certainly
high power levels?
That can certainly be a way, right? Like once again, if you get so I mean, I think the numbers right now is like you can get like you start with 100 Spirit and aura reserves 100 Spirit, but you can get like, and probably I shouldn't even quote me on these numbers. I think you can get like 600 Spirit from a scepter. So it's like you can still, if that's the way you want to go, you can go that way.
Okay.
I mean, I never want to be the kind of person who's just like, nah, we're restricting everything. We don't want players to do it. No, like we want you to be able to, if you want to spec into something, you should be able to go hard on that thing and get like a lot of it, right? So yeah.
I have a couple questions with the dodge roll. I
Yes,
guess
go on.
let's tie the first one into the minion build. So right now in PoE 1, it's kind of swerving a little bit away from that, where there's a lot more active minion builds, but there's still passive minion builds. We still have skills like Righteous Fire, dot builds. There's a lot of time in between using skills. So with a spammable dodge roll in PoE 2, do you foresee some builds that are just like non-stop dodging around the boss while doing passive damage?
I mean, it could be it could be something that you do, but I'm hoping that we can provide enough things. Like, so, I mean, ideally the balance produces the most fun outcome, right? Like ideally, like, okay, sure, you could just dodge roll around the boss and kill it eventually, but you're probably going to want to use, like, it's funny, I've actually had conversations with designers like, oh yeah, this is the only skill I'd ever use. And I'm like, okay, but then if you just did this, then you know it increase your damage with this and you get this effect. And like, oh yeah, you know what, I guess I'll just add that in too. And then you have that, and then they're like, oh yeah, but then if you added this skill, you know, like now you'd be able to do this as well, and that would just, and it's like, oh yeah, well I guess I could use that skill too. It's like, we kind of want to promote the balance so that you always feel very much like, oh yeah, I just want to add this extra thing.
Oh
I just wanna add this
yeah.
extra thing, and then pretty soon
Oh,
you've
the
got, like,
balance.
ruckus of
Oh
skills on your
yeah.
character,
I don't want to do
that
the
are all, you know,
easiest
that all have a
possible
purpose
thing.
and all feel like they've got useful in certain situations, and especially with the way the skill system works now, we can have 9 6 links. You know, like it's okay to just have some skills that you just use rarely, right? That are just in the right situation they're useful.
Well, I wanted to ask about that a little bit later, but since you're touching upon it, what determines the links on a skill gem?
Right. So basically, every gem when you first get it starts with 2 support sockets, and then you find a jeweler's a lesser jeweler's orb to add to go from 2 supports to 3 supports.
Okay.
And then there's a jeweler's to go from 3 to 4, and then a Grandmaster's, I can't remember the name of it, but Grandmaster's Jewelers or something like that goes from 4 to 5, and then obviously 5 sockets in a gem is the same as a 6 link is in PoE 1, so 5 supports, 1 active. So basically you find those, and the one to go up to the 6 link equivalent is quite rare, like that's still the like chase thing, but instead of having like ridiculous numbers of fusings that you're dropping into an item, it's like, you know, you will just find one eventually, and then that's, you know, and because you want to 6 link all your items, they have to be common enough that you can, like, you know, but getting the quest for all 6 links on your character is still like a thing that, you know, you're going to want to do, and you know, there's some
that sounds like a lot. So many more options when you're
that sounds tedious.
Well, we're gonna do the gameplay demo, I think, in about 15 minutes. I think the PoE 2 gameplay demo is going to be Zizaran that tackles it the first time, so we'll see. Maybe he finds some of these items.
Yes, I think he might be able to. Yes.
Okay, well that should be pretty interesting. Backing into kind of the dodge system. So in Ruthless right now, they just have the dash. It's very limiting movement.
Right. So this is very, very different from the dodge roll.
And in PoE 2, we get the dodge roll, which is almost like a spammable version of it.
Sure.
And the skills themselves have a movement component, and it's not just for the melee characters, as you noted with Comet on the Sorcerer. It kind of pushes you back a little bit if you want it to. This kind of brings up my question of, do we need skills like Flame Dash? Will there be strictly movement-based skills?
I don't personally feel that they're hugely necessary. Like, there should be enough mobility in just what you're doing that it feels okay. Like, a large number of melee skills have dashes or closes and like various other things. Like, depending on the skill, like obviously different archetypes are a bit different, but everyone, no matter what weapon you're using, will have some kind of access to like stuff that allows you to get around the battlefield quickly. It's just that like there's ways to do that where it feels natural without kind of making it so that it gets to this insane degree that things can sometimes get if you let it get out of control. So like, I mean, all the things like the, for example, like the monk's killing palm, you can go really far with that thing, but you have to go to an enemy. So it kind of inherently means that you kind of get the, like it works really well for mobility and combat without kind of making it so that you're just constantly going jing like everywhere, you know? Yeah, you kind of, we want to make it still feel right, and like intuitive and fun and mobile without kind of having that just like you're constantly spamming movement skills to the point where you can't even see what the hell you're doing, kind of thing.
Well, from the gameplay people will try out at ExileCon, and from the live demos that you will see, hopefully we'll get some opinions and see how people feel around it.
I mean, honestly, the major reason, like one of the huge things about dodge roll to me, like the biggest thing that I'm excited about is the dodge cancel, because what it means is that like just the whole like I'm not losing control of my.
Well, I like switching skills a lot, you know. And when your 6 link is tied to your skill, if you ever want to change skills, you need to make sure you have a 6 link one first. And apparently they're still rare. So it's not like I'm wearing a tabula. Maybe I don't want to use Fireball. Maybe I want to use like a Firebolt, because there's 30 variants of Fireballs. Well, you can't really test a 6 link Fireball versus Firebolt until you get a 6 link gem, right? Because it's the gem that has the links, not the armor. So anytime you want to change skill, you have to get this rare thing.
The weapon swap system, it's more of like a dual weapon.
It is kind of a dual specking thing.
So it's still, to me, the issue. It is a rare thing to have a 6 link, but it is also expected and necessary to have it.
Each of the skills and the power that you unlock from the passive skill tree.
Yeah.
But also the weapons just kind of seemed like more powerful in general. Like getting a spammable skill on a Sork, getting the Unleash. It just seemed like there was possibly more weapon power. There's more power from your gear centered on your weapon than maybe PoE 1. Is that
there is a
goal?
little bit more balance in that direction. It's not like hugely. It's not like so. We thought that, like, so I think we sort of, so spellcasters, we tried to make the weapon a bit more of a focus. Like like spellcasters right now in PoE in PoE 1, like the weapon. I mean, obviously it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. Whereas we want to boot them. Now we still want to have the distinction between attack builds and caster builds, and the weapon still matters more on attacks than caster builds in PoE 1 in PoE 2 still. But we did want to get that focus up a little bit more, and at the same time we also wanted, and this is kind of a subtle thing that probably most people won't even notice, but we made it so that the skill gem level on attack skills also matters more on attacks as well, which in currently PoE 1 that really doesn't matter very much at all.
Some of them have like a flat damage component.
Yeah,
most
some of them do. But we actually,
not so much.
I actually do have it as a goal to make it so that like most of the time you're going to want to use the higher level versions of things, and that's actually partly to make attribute requirements actually matter a little bit. Which is as just a random side division. Just by the way, talking about attribute requirements, the way that support gem attribute requirements work now is that the amount that the attributes that a support gem the attribute requirement for support gems is additive to the skill gem.
Oh.
So that means that if you're playing a Dex build and you want to use 5 int supports, that actually becomes quite tricky now, based entirely on the attributes. We had to do it that way because we don't have the whole thing where you have to because there's not the off-color socket re-rolling mechanic anymore. There has to be some way to make it so that using off-class stuff is like a little bit harder. So because of the way that works now, the attribute requirements matter a little bit more for you should be able to easily get the attributes for stuff that's on class, but the stuff that's off class is harder because the attributes sort of make it a bit harder.
Personally, I really like that because right now you have the limitation on number of
Translate that. I missed the whole first half, I think. What is he saying? Because like the first thing they tell you is, oh, deterministic chromatic orbs. Whoa, that's so helpful. And then they don't tell you whatever the fuck you just explained. We have 6 red gems linked. The strength for attribute requirement adds up. I see.
Has its disadvantages, but now you're going away with that. You need other kinds of limitations to prevent just unlimited character power.
Right. So,
I think that's a really clever way of doing it. I'm actually really happy to hear that.
Cool.
Another direction on this one. So we saw Alva show up in the demo. I'm sure this is still probably something you're discussing internally, so I'm not sure how much you want to share, but are we expecting many familiar faces or league mechanics in PoE 2?
Well, I mean, for a start, as we've already said, certainly league mechanics, many of them will have revamped versions in PoE 2.
Okay.
Obviously, so the main problem, honestly, is like you see an old particle effect next to a new one, and it's like, okay, we have to update that, and this is pretty much soon you're like, have to update it. Like all these things sort of go on. But absolutely, I mean, we are going to be like canon correct as far as like the ages of people with regard to PoE 1 versus PoE 2. But Alva is a time traveler, so
I see.
we get away with a bit more, with a bit more there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
So one thing that has actually, in my opinion, really defined Path of Exile and kind of pushed the RPG genre is the different game modes in which you can play new content in equally. So you've always had, hardcore and softcore, but we also have solo self-found. Now we have Ruthless, which is very exciting for me personally. I'm a ruthless enjoyer personally. Will these game modes continue on in PoE 2?
So we're certainly going to have hardcore.
Okay.
We're certainly going to have solo self-found. I don't see why we wouldn't. Ruthless probably shouldn't be necessary. I mean, I'm sure there'll come a point, like once the balance of PoE 2 becomes ridiculous over 10 years, where we'll be like, oh crap, you know, we need to have like a thing for old school Path of Exile 2 players to enjoy or something like that. But yeah, for now, I don't think that we would need it.
But on the time travel, it seems like a fair big part of the PoE 2 story has to do with Scourge. And Scourge was heavily an Alva thing, which is not just time travel, but also their multiple dimensions that they have. That the Scourge is one of the biggest threats to the multi-dimensions, and this one that we're currently in has not experienced much of the Scourge. That was the whole Scourge mechanic of, like, it would let you go into the Scourge dimension to kill them and then come back to your world. And based on a lot of the stuff that they've shown already in, like, the trailer artwork, is it seems like the coming of the Scourge through the old Chaos God guy, Ultimatum stuff, Karui stuff, that there's like a connection there, and that seems to be like the main threat.
Because we don't want to split the community too much, because you want like people to be able to actually, you know, like have people to play with and all that sort of stuff. I mean, obviously not for solo self-found, which is why it kind of can exist as a thing. But yeah, don't want to split it too much. But yeah, certainly hardcore and solo self-found.
And also, if I didn't already say it, or you didn't already know, that Alva was the main character in the Scourge League, and she was just renamed, and it was a time traveling her. I think they called her the last to die, and she was the one telling you that the Scourge fucked up every other like timeline and dimension except for one. Not counting yours. There's like one other one.
When I heard the announcement that PoE 2 was going to be a separate game from PoE 1, initially it's exciting, and then it's like, but wait. And then you say the microtransactions that you have, the skins, they kind of follow into PoE 2. And I mean, that's really fantastic. That's a really clever way of doing it and keeping them separate games.
And it's worth mentioning, to me, the more exciting thing is honestly the future, like the fact you can buy stuff that made after PoE 2 comes out and have it in PoE 1 again, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I want to, like, and the reason we're doing all that stuff is I really want to make sure that people feel like, you know, like, well, it's like we want to make sure that our company like doesn't feel incentivized to abandon PoE 1, and by making it so that we have this policy, it means that we're always like, you know, like PoE 1 will always be a thing that's like important to us, because it's like, it's not like, you know, just some random product in the back corner which no one cares about. Like, it's actually a thing that, like, you know, has supporter packs and there's things you can get, and, you know, like people actually want to, you know, like that's actually a thing. So yeah, I just want to make sure that our company like does sort of like still not do PoE 1 dirty, you know, like it needs to sort of like have a good future as well, in my opinion.
Well, it seems pretty good to me. I'm excited to play next league. But I guess the follow-up to that, the one thing that I was like a little bit worried of, if I end up liking PoE 2 way more, and I don't, you know, I'm still in play PoE 1, but if I end up playing PoE 2 a lot more than I play PoE 1, which I think is
I mean, I would hope so, being the director of PoE 2.
The race rewards, I'd love to be able to at least use their skins in PoE 2. Have you thought of doing anything like that?
Well, so basically anything in the microtransaction stash is something you'll be able to use. So it would depend on whether or not at some point Chris gets around to implementing the thing where you can pull them off and turn them into a skin. If that's the case, then sure, it'll work in PoE 2. Because yeah, that's anything in the micro stash, that's what comes over.
All right. Well, we are going to jump into the gameplay for PoE 2 very soon here with Zizaran. I think if we have just another quick second, I'd maybe ask you, what's your favorite power fantasy in an ARPG, and have you made it yet in PoE 2?
That's a really hard question, because you're basically saying
you got 30 seconds.
I've got oh, Jesus Christ! I always hate these ones, because it's like, you know, we made all these classes, and but I think probably like one of the main reasons that we went with the whole like 2 classes per attribute combination thing was because of the druid. It's like we wanted to have a druid, and there just wasn't a class that it made sense for, and we're like, okay, we have to find a way to make it so a druid can be a thing, and yeah, that's what we came up with.
All right, well, I hope you nailed it. Thank you so much for watching, guys.
Yeah,
we'll see you in a second.
Thank you.
Gotta have the druid. I know they're streaming more stuff today. We already saw a playthrough. I guess this playthrough is a different area with a different character.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Of the amazing animations.
In which to.
I'm kind of,
All right.
Well, hello there. I can activate.
Is what is this? Is this mobile?
Oh shit.
I don't know. Was the stream lagging or is the mobile game lagging?
Yep.
Kind of looks like his fingers aren't lagging, so.
You guys like hard games, huh?
Yeah, you should be able to finish him now.
Alright.
Oh my god. Because of the streaming frame rate? I don't know. It's kind of looking like direct capture.
And all the other ones kill each other? Okay. Alright, Dama's my new man.
I have a special task for you.
All right, but they appropriately put the mobile game at the end of their shit because they know you don't care. Kitten, kabadoodle.
Chieftains and stuff like that, and every single one was just an absolute blast. All the voice actors were fantastic. They're all.
And then it's a playthrough with I don't know who that is.
On yourself and say everything.
One deal.
Well, that is going to be 100%.
Cheats enabled.
Whoa.
And welcome to the wacky Path of Exile 1 mechanics Q&A. So the goal with this talk is
Path of Exile 1.
cover the crazy Path of Exile 1 mechanics that you've always wanted to know about. We have a cast of Path of Exile 1 developers here, including Mark, our programmer, who knows the game backwards. You'll know him from the Reddit and forum replies. He knows every aspect of every mechanical thing. He is armed
Let me
here
see what
with
they're
a full
currently
copy of
streaming.
the game's source code, our development tools, and a client with cheats enabled. And this means you can ask crazy questions like, what would happen if you had 500 extra arrows?
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
A loop when you Raymart.
Oh no, dude. Oh, dude, you're muted, dude. Oh, dude. Okay, I gotta think about what I'm doing next. So basically what we did today, to re-explain, we have these basic 9 cases of modifying a weapon when they're generated. I would have to go through on every single weapon now, and it's like the last thing on weapon generation. After everything is done, it does weapon mods. Currently, it's doing that based on the number of mods there are, which I might just force to be a small chance to have 1. But currently it's set to always happen, so every single one of these swords that I'm generating is getting like minus 30 accuracy. What the fuck did this one get? That's weird. Something just broke on this one. These are weird to debug sometimes and try and figure out what happened. Because they can turn it into a large weapon, which generally speaking is supposed to make them do a lot more damage. And I think the negative accuracy one was also supposed to make it do more damage. So I would have to double check that large weapon is working correctly. Because it doesn't seem like it is. It's global accuracy. I'm just trying to distinguish that accuracy. Like if you're holding this one-handed weapon, your other one-handed weapon would also get this accuracy bonus, where it would not get this accuracy deficit because that is local to this specific one-handed weapon. Yeah, this one got critical, this one got bonus damage. There's some weird thing where I want every single modifier to appear before the damage, and I don't know why they are not. So I'm going to look into that, but mostly this is what I've done. There's a couple of like simple ones. I can always add more to this list of weapon modifiers. I don't think I'm going to be able to do the other thing I wanted to do with turning these into items that players could apply to other weapons. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. Too much. This sword always has global accuracy. So the sword that I'm rerolling is always global accuracy, and then one bonus thing that it's grabbing from this list at the moment. It's just we're forcing the same base type of weapon basically to drop over and over and over again. So it's consistent. Yes, I'm gonna try to figure out that situation, why this is appearing after damage, because it looks bad.
It's a pretty typical effect.
What does this talk about? He really didn't get to introduce it because he was muted.
Appears, shifts a little bit, experiment with it, and learn this way.
Flowing.
Next technique that allows you to
or
direct
I'm
their
not that
UVs,
guy.
For example, each other. Strikes when the Nova strikes. So that, but the question only in tiny possible.
PoE 1 and 2
is better, right?
Methods in PoE.
Will be
And then they ask him questions. Coming up, Mark Roberts, the bosses and monsters of Path of Exile 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll get into, just briefly explain what we're going to be doing. Very unrehearsed. We're taking a bit of a different approach with this one, and what's going to be happening is I got Octavian over here playing. Instead of putting up slides with text and pictures of the bosses, we're just going to demo them live as I talk about them. Later on in the talk, if anyone's willing to test their might, we will be. We've got some stairs installed.
This last weapon I generated, what the fuck? The weight is negative 3.4. And it is also negative 3 bonus damage. Wait a second.
People to raise their hand. You can come on stage if I pick you.
Oh, because I took this from armor, and armors can roll negatives.
If you succeed, or let's say do well enough,
This shouldn't
I've
be
got
able
some
to.
merch over there to give you. And then obviously Q&A at the end if we have time, but if fighting bosses is more entertaining, then we can just keep that going. I'm going to move around a lot, sorry to the lighting team, I like to pace. If I do any dancing like I did the last exilecon that people made GIFs out of, feel free to update them. I have lost a lot of weight, as some people have known, and I would like to have some updated GIFs about that. Thank you very much. So to get into bosses and monsters, well, as seen from the earlier trailer, we have a good 100 bosses, one per area. Except for towns, obviously. So, well, we could put bosses in towns. No bosses in towns yet. So we've got 100 bosses, one in every area, and that's not even talking about endgame. Don't you worry what's going to happen there. We never cease to have our fair share of pinnacle bosses, and obviously the same bosses will reappear in maps and a later topic. As for monsters, we've got 600 distinct monsters with different skills.
You know, him bringing that up, and I've been thinking about it a little bit, but he brought it up first, so. They're separating PoE 1 and 2. One of the best things that PoE 2 really has going for it is that it was going to borrow, presumably, so much content. But if it's its own separate game, they were originally going to connect at endgame. I think, like, one of the best parts about PoE right now is how many endgame options there are. But I don't think they're going to be like, oh man, like Delve is outdated. We're not going to allow you to delve anymore because we haven't made an updated version of Delve. Searing Exarch, all this stuff, like, this doesn't really like fit PoE 2. So like my major concern would be that they're just going to cut so much content that it's not going to have that big of a depth in the way PoE 1 currently does. Because if they're, like, even what he's just saying, they're repeating bosses for endgame, naturally. They're just going to have a smaller pool of bosses, which is going to ultimately mean a smaller pool of maps. They said they've revamped all the league content. They haven't shown any of it though, which is kind of concerning. And they keep trying to update PoE 1's league mechanics. Like Breach kept getting like visual overhauls the last couple of leagues, and they're obviously like putting some work into that, with the original expectation again being that they were going to combine at some point. But now the expectation is no longer that they're going to combine. So my question ultimately is, what percentage of shit is getting cut? And I think there's a fair bit that can be cut. There's a lot of there's a lot of mechanic bloats. Like if Blight were gone, I wouldn't lose sleep over that. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. That the big, really, really, really big endgame that PoE currently has. Like if we lost Delve, oh, sad boy.
Looks, names, abilities, everything. Every area has a completely different feel to every other area. It is amazing to play through. It feels very, very fresh every time you travel to different areas. You're not getting a lot of the stale repetition. Now, obviously, skeletons appear in more than one zone and whatnot, so it's not completely all unique in every single area. But for those who have played the demo, you can today you can see what we've got. Now, making bosses is probably my pride point of working, being a game designer. It is the thing I'm most proud of, and the thing I enjoy the most. I like to see them kill people, including myself earlier. It's fine. I practice that a lot.
I like killing. It's kill guy. I like to see them killing, and I like blood, and I like murder, and murder should be fun.
Accident. I did die. It did kill me. I'm not good enough. It's fine. Anyway, so we've got Octavian here. We've got, again, very little rehearsals. I'm pretty much just going to be telling him what I think we should fight, kind of picking them somewhat at random. I'm going to be going through slides and back a whole bunch, but there's nothing to really see but a game client up there. I've just got some real, this one just says intro numb monsters, that's all it says, so winging it. All right, so we're going to have Octavian go to fight Krutog, who is in the Volcanic Warrens in Act 4. Act 4 is my favorite act for bosses, and the reason being is that you can travel to all these different islands. So as for most acts, they have a consistent theme. So you've got Act 3 being very Val and jungle. You've got Act 2 being very desert Marraketh. You've got Act 1 being the Ezomite and the Gothic horror. Act 4 it has the Karui consistency through and hints of it, but every island is just a different biome. So you get this high diversity of different kinds of bosses, and that's really cool, and monsters for that matter, and that's really, really cool to me. Feel free, go for it. I'll talk about it as well. I'll try and get out of the way just a little bit. This is Krutog, the Lord of Kin. Some of you might have already gotten to him in the demos. And we've got Octavian here playing on the warrior. There might be bugs, things might go wrong. It's completely live.
Don't apologize, dude.
Okay,
oh, look how focused he is.
In terms of context, just a bit of story. This guy is this. You can tell he's massive, right? He's a big dude, and what's going on here is that there are these goblin kin that are inhabiting the island, and these goblin see him as a god figure, just because he's so massive. And they bring him, if you play through the areas, you can see all the goblins, the goblin-esque, I think they're called kin, kind of this tall kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know what they are.
Because he's so big, yeah, they just see him as a god and they worship him, and they want to make him happy, and so they bring him, monsters, they bring him humans, they bring him like playthings, and they also bring him food. They're bringing things to him that they think will make him happy,
But nothing makes him happy.
The good life. I'm sitting here on my throne in this warm area, getting brought playthings, and so you can see he's got a suit of armor that's made out of human corpses. And when you start the fight and you first initially approach him, he's actually got two humans in his hands kind of playing and going at each other like they're dolls. And it's, he's to you, you're just a plaything to him. And you get a lot of this with this mechanic exactly going on right here, where he's trying to stomp you. You're just a bug to him. He's just trying to squish you. This fight is pretty relatively difficult as melee, but it's alright, we're not expecting anyone to succeed first attempt.
Melee.
In terms of mechanics, another thing is that they like to bring him sulfite to eat the goblins, and you can see this, he's done this already in the fight where he walks over and he
Ground
picks up some of the
degens.
sulfite and eats it.
Stomps
This
around.
unlocks 2 new abilities that he's doing
Melee.
now. One is the just burp. He does a big burp and lets out a wave of partial chaos, partial lightning damage because it's electrified voltaxic sulfite. And Nico would probably love to find this island, but he hasn't quite yet. We have to find the sulfite. He's if he found it, he wouldn't need us. So don't tell him about it. As for the other mechanic, he does a big vomit.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, dude.
You can do 2, so there can be 2 active at once, and obviously that creates more pressure, makes it harder, more claustrophobia, which I like to have in these fights. So
it's kind of getting a little. I like it. I like the slower. It's boss fights are getting a little bit too slow. I feel like I've seen his moveset 10 times already.
Good attempt. Oh, good. I'll have a quick just bit more. You can start it again. I'll just.
Again, don't really know how shit the characters are.
One thing in particular he has, which you can see in a lot of the boss fights, is he is very large. Now this was very difficult in PoE 1, and you'll notice that most of our very large bosses, are stationary. So Katava's a good example. He cannot move. Arakali's another one. They cannot move. And that's because we have, in PoE 1, we have one central hitbox to an entity, and it's a square. And increasing that has complexities with things like pathfinding. But
Yeah, like, I don't think it would be that much different if you played PoE 1 and you were trash at the game and you didn't have, like, the 7 layers of damage. But they also haven't shown a lot of, I don't think they've shown any skills which represent layered damage, and I mean by that, like, totems or, like, active stuff like that. No one is poisoning anything. No one is summoning totems. They haven't shown minions, though they've talked about them. So normally, like, melee characters would benefit a lot from, like, you need to curse them. You need to summon a totem. You need to have auras. I don't think any of the players have had auras. No, Mathel had a Herald of Ash, which it technically isn't an aura, but you know what I mean. Like, there's just a lot of character building layers which are not shown, and it might just be because they're not ready. But yeah, dude, I don't know, because like I was saying, if you do the same thing in PoE 1 and you don't have all that shit, you're gonna have a hard time too.
We can also have it that on some bosses, if, for example, if we were to redo Katava, if he has a thing where he has obviously the skill where he buries his hand in the ground, we could activate a hitbox there so you can then just hit his arm. This is something we would be able to do now, we couldn't do before. So yeah, ultimately...
He's stunned the boss yet? I don't think so.
Is just, like, this isn't an act boss. He looks epic. He's just mid-act. He's just a one of, 18 or so bosses, or however, whatever the math ends up being there. Bosses just located in Act 4. Now he's considered a slightly higher tier because he's at the end of a couple of areas, but so he's more than, like, say, the Quadrilla monster I fought during the keynote. He's 1 tier up from that. But yeah, very epic. One other thing I wanted to talk about, which I was hoping to be able to see, but I haven't been paying enough attention, is, and it was in the last talk, you saw it probably during the keynote, if you were there, you can now stun bosses. You can freeze bosses. We're also having mechanical...
You know what? I'm really just staring at it. I should have maximized it.
Longer duration stun as well. Oh, stun.
I think he's stalling. He needs to fight this boss for as long as the talk will take as well. Because also, melee slam builds are some of the worst builds in PoE 1. And if they're going to be anywhat decent, it would have to have Ignite. And again, they haven't shown Ignite existing, or Poison, or anything that deals damage over time, or anything that has, like, a persistent, I don't always need to be hitting this damage. If you're doing, like, Giganto Slam... There's no impale.
Yeah, so you can stun these things, they get stunned for 6 seconds.
I don't know. It's like, it's really hard to judge what they're showing when you don't know what they're not showing. You don't know if the things have been excluded or you know, they just don't exist.
Or half as often, and so because we get to do all that, certain heavy stun has certain value.
Intentionally chose the slow skills. I know that they like to choose slow skills to show off fights, so it's like clear what's going on and you don't confuse anyone. You don't overwhelm anyone. You don't show anyone the skill tree. Every time they've shown the skill tree during demos, they've shown like a very small snippet of one area. They have done their due diligence in not trying to show the passive tree to people. Because everyone freaks the fuck out when they get choices in an ARPG, but then when you don't give them choices in D4, they also freak out. They don't know what they want.
You can see them riding on top of these big beasts, and they jump off when you get near them. Pretty cool mechanic. But in this case, this one was untamable. They couldn't control it, so they put it in an arena. They built an arena, and they bring people here to fight against it and to test their might and to see if they're strong enough while they're all cheering. Now, if you do happen to defeat it, they all get a bit scared and shocked, and they all just flee, and they're gone. Because now to you, you're very intimidating. Now the rest of the level, they'll still fight you because they didn't get to see you fight it.
No frenzies or ailments. Yeah, there is just active skills. As you bring up frenzy is another great example. It's just active skills with no damage multipliers.
What do we call them? A bit like kind of abyss cracks, I guess. And then slams, and it causes damage along them, and that creates degen for a duration. What else about this one? So this one, his heavy stun animation, which just happened.
Yeah, no guard skills either, which is weird. I figured like how they're talking about the design, that they would be really happy to share and showcase how much work has gone into redoing guard skills, because I feel like that's a core part of their design. They only really showed Arctic armor, which is not a guard skill. It's like a mana reservation. Guard skills normally being you activate them, they're active for like 1 second. And they absorb damage, but I feel like the dodge roll might be just replacing them all, because it's expected that every character has a dodge roll with no cooldown that can make you evade damage. But like, I could see that.
A lot of bosses in the campaign do it. This one in particular, I believe, drops like a soaked, bile-soaked skill book.
Yeah, I don't know. They're just still talking about all the depth and all the whatnot. They haven't shown a single character with a unique item.
Throughout the whole campaign, not every single boss.
Even, actually.
We have different rewards.
So like PoE known for depth, they've like stripped all of the depth out of it for showcase purposes, but it leaves a lot of questions.
And this is actually something Diablo 2 did. They will have much higher rarity and better drops. So you're really incentivized to explore throughout.
These characters have rares. The playthrough that streamers were doing, they got like an Act 4 level 45 character, and they had like one rare on them, I think.
So much of the random mini bosses. Like there's always the question of, once you know what you're doing, should you kill Fire Fury? Well, I don't know how many people here do. I don't think I ever do. But we really want it to be now that you feel like you've missed out on something if you skip it.
I want to watch the new Path of Exile trailer. Hold up.
We're good. Oh, good. Anyway, if you would have killed him, he would have dropped probably a quest item that you would be able to use and get a permanent bonus. We're going to try a very difficult one now. Sorry.
Was destroyed, I traveled, searching for answers. Everywhere I went, the same divine devastation. It must end. I will end it. And no exile will stop me.
You know what else I'm actually really surprised about is they open with this whole like cinematic showing environments and stuff, and I would have expected PoE to be like, oh, we spent bajillions of dollars on this new campaign. I was expecting a really high budget like cinematic trailer, because that's some classic D2 Blizzard type spiel right there. Oh, none of that.
I will end it. And no exile will stop me.
That flail still looking sick. I wanted to see that again, though. Whatever he's throwing. A 2-foot-long spectral throw. Some Darksiders too. Hold on, let me pause on these boobies real quick. No, on all this shit they say and much more. That's just the end game with no changes from PoE 1. That's end game Atlas skill tree as it currently is, as far as I can tell. That's a nipple, bruh. And much, that's also a boss that they showcased. That's just one of the bosses. You already listed it. Unless it's tied to some other mechanic. Okay.
This world will be reborn, no matter the cost.
I mean, I guess my conclusion is I get why it's another year out. I don't know. This ExileCon feeling a little weird that they must have quite recently decided to do the whole split between PoE 1 and 2. And thus PoE 2 is like missing a lot of content that they don't feel confident showing yet. And then beta was a year, so like, yeah, it's just a weird timeline because people are expecting it to be pretty much done. It's not. And they're showing it. And I think people are still, including myself, looking at it from the perspective of this is done, but it's not done. It's still like another year before it's a beta. New League looks hyped though, except Chieftain. Yeah. I mean, if they're not combined, then it's not a big deal either. If PoE 1 is actually getting more attention again, they put more people on it, and they actually do leagues like this one where it looks like a lot of new stuff compared to like Crucible, which was nice, but it's just more PoE, which is nice. So the end conclusion, which I am sad to come to, is that ExileCon's kind of disappointing. Everything they've shown is like a weird lack of true context for what it is they're trying to make, and almost an acknowledgement that it isn't going to be what PoE 1 players wanted. That's why they're continuing to make PoE 1. Like, at some point in development, they're like, man, people are gonna fucking hate this. Let's just not cancel, like, PoE 1 and stop merging it, because, I don't know. Feels like, trying to compete with what Diablo 4 was doing, which was, like, a slower, grittier, and no one liked it. So, PoE 2 tried to be... PoE 1 has been trying to be Diablo 2. People haven't been liking that. PoE 2 feels like at some point they're like, okay, we know what Diablo 4 is up to. Let's try and be more like them and capture that audience. And that's like what the generic crowd wants. And this is what we're going to make. And they did that pivot. And then people didn't like D4 that much. And now they've got this crazy slow gameplay with like no context. And like their primary showcase on a lot of these are like, look how hard these bosses are. Like, oh man, you're not going to beat this boss first try. That's probably off-putting to a lot of people. In it?
Try and anchor from the sky. I can't remember the color correlations. Oh, no, same color. I'm blind apparently. And so we've got red here, which causes this giant cannon barrage to appear. And then we
So there's so, I don't know, it's a weird spot of there's still so much good that PoE 2 is doing.
and the fight changes based on which one of those it randomly
And it's so self-aware of the PoE 1's problems that they're trying to solve, like spirit instead of mana reservation and like simple mechanical things. But it's created a playground of like, look how hard this boss is and how long it takes. While we use slow-ass slam melee builds that nobody fucking plays. Just because they're like visually impactful. But also, it's like, hey, you can have 9 6-links now. You can have so many different skills for so many different situations. I'm just seeing the same dude charge up the same slam over and over again. Is what I'm seeing. So what they're saying sounds great. I sure hope that's what they're doing, because they're not really showing it yet. 15 seconds rolling and 2 seconds swinging. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, he attacked the boss like 1 time while we were watching.
Alrighty, well, there's no time for Q&A, and we're perfectly hitting the end of the time. Anything else to talk about here? Quickly, I didn't
Dark Souls, baby. But like I was saying, there's not the typical layers of damage and items that would help it be any different.
Anything, feel free to look for more. Awesome. Well done.
Well done, you lost. You did nothing. You're item design. I'm curious what they're gonna say about, because also whenever they talk about item design, they show a magic item. It's like a base item type. They like show the staff. It's not like, oh, here's like a cool unique. There's, based on what they've shown, there are no unique items in PoE 2. Which before I would have assumed, well, all of the PoE 1 uniques will continue to exist in PoE 2.
So it was the most important thing. So you look at the part that you're picturing in your head. It's the part that.
Oh, this is art design in it.
But it was always a bit of a problem to me that things look inconsistent. It's because different artists have different approaches to how they just paint and render and do things, and sometimes they'll be like, we need a unique yesterday. So someone will just get a photo of a shield, I guess. And so PoE 2, these aren't the same items as the previous screen, so don't freak out that Calm's heart now looks like that, because that's not it. This is just an example of similar size stuff. Basically, every single item, even if it's a small thing, gets through the full treatment of things. Base type that it comes from, It's really exciting.
Intelligence. And damage is no different, right? Like attribute alignments in this game. And we consider this very important as a way of aligning certain attributes with different mechanics in the
I wasn't done. I wasn't done looking.
Rated implicit in most certain attributes.
Boop boop. Now I'm done.
It's with different mechanics in the game.
Where's Spear? It was bottom right.
Weapons in there. I'll let you look to see what they are. But
The flail looks really cool, though.
Associate different weapons with different attributes.
All the new weapon types look cool.
Sort of gives us a
I'm curious why daggers are, traps
for example,
are being considered a weapon
stats are
type.
usually aligned to strength in our game. Evasion is aligned to dexterity. Energy shield is aligned to intelligence. And damage is no different, right? Strength-aligned weapons generally have higher damage per individual hit. Dex-aligned weapons are usually faster when it comes to their swing speeds. And int-aligned weapons
This
are
guy's
usually
just
really good at doing
explaining
critical
what
strikes.
an RPG is. That's what a lot of this is, dude. It's like not even PoE specific. Like, we're making our daggers faster.
How are you going to best make use of something like this? Oh, that's an exercise left to the user. I'm sure
And
there'll
again,
be a
that's what
million
I'm
different
saying.
number
They're
of
still on the
ways, but
phase that they've been making this game for so long, and they just cut all the content of PoE 1 out of it, and they were like, hey, look at this white item. We're so beyond that.
Pretty fun, right? So you might be wondering, what about people that want to hit people with staves? So we have split out the melee portion of stave into its own weapon class called the quarterstaff, and it's sort of thematically linked to the monk. But again, this is Path of Exile. Anyone can use any weapon and do anything. All the mods here are obviously attack-related mods, and here is a particularly interesting one, which has a longer range than every other quarterstaff.
Okay, here's the final statement, and I think I'm actually going to end the stream because I don't know, I built the base of this. I worked out this morning. We did how many logs can you lift in 1 minute, go for as fast as you can log lifting session type workout. And I'm dead inside. This game is not nearly as finished as I thought. And I think the biggest takeaway is that I hope now that they've split PoE 1 and PoE 2, the PoE leagues for the next year are going to be better than the last 3. Because I'm more excited for them than PoE 2 right now, showing me your fucking quarterstaff with 16% increased range. There's just, it looks fantastic. You have a great foundation. We thought you were past the foundation when you showed us a 20-minute gameplay of Act 2 fucking 3 years ago. I hope you finish it up. I still have absolute faith it's going to be a great game. But, yeah, good luck with that. Okay, good luck. I'm on the infinite waiting treadmill of every time they announce it, it's like a year or two further.